A young millionaire married a poor waitress, but she revealed her secret at the wedding. The fluorescent lights of New York Presbyterian Hospital cast harsh shadows as Ryan Matthews burst through the emergency room doors, his heart pounding against his chest. "My wife. She's pregnant with twins. Something's wrong." He gasped to the startled nurse at the reception desk. Behind him, paramedics rushed in with Mia on a stretcher, her face pale as marble, dark hair matted with sweat. Blood stained the stretcher sheets, too much blood. Her hand clutched her swollen belly as she writhed in pain. BP dropping, possible placental abruption, one paramedic called out. 28 weeks pregnant with twins. Dr. Sarah Anderson, the head of obstetrics, appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "Get her 2 or 3 stat. Type and cross for 4 units. Call NICU and tell them to prepare for premature twins." As they wheeled Mia away, her eyes found Ryan's. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry for everything." Ryan reached for her hand, but she was already gone, disappeared behind swinging doors marked authorized personnel. Only he stood frozen, those last words echoing in his mind, taking him back to where it all began, their wedding day, just 4 months ago. The Hampton estate had been perfect that day, flowers in full bloom, ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and roses. Mia had been radiant in white, walking down the aisle toward him. Then Alex had stood up, that damned envelope in his hand. Ryan deserves to know the truth about who he's marrying. The memories crashed over him in waves, gasps from the guests, Mia's face crumpling in shame, his own world tilting on its axis as years of carefully constructed lies came tumbling down. The Castellanos scandal, his company's role in their downfall, Mia's hidden identity, it had all exploded in a single moment. He had walked away that day, leaving his bride standing alone at the altar. The look in her eyes had haunted him ever since. "Mr. Matthews," Dr. Anderson's voice snapped him back to the present. Her surgical cap was already on, her expression grave. "We have a situation. The placental abruption is severe. Both babies are in distress, and Mia's losing blood faster than we can replace it." Ryan gripped the wall for support. "What are you saying?" "We may have to choose. The strain of carrying twins has caused complications we couldn't have foreseen. If we tried to save all 3, she left the sentence hanging." "No," Ryan choked out. "There has to be another way. We need your decision. As next of kin." "Save them," a voice rang out across the waiting room. Ryan turned to see Edward Castellanos, Mia's father, striding toward them. The once powerful tech mogul looked aged beyond his years, but his eyes blazed with determination. "Save my daughter and my grandchildren. Spare no expense." Dad, Ryan hadn't even called him. How did he know? Edward placed a firm hand on Ryan's shoulder. "I've already lost everything else. I won't lose her too. Whatever happened between our families, none of that matters now." Alarms blared from the operating room. Dr. Anderson's pager shrieked. "She's crashing. I have to go. Mr. Matthews, your decision." Ryan looked at Edward, then back at the doctor. 4 months of anger and betrayal melted away in the face of possibly losing everything. The memory of Mia's smile, the sound of their baby's heartbeats at the last ultrasound, the truth he'd finally learned too late. "Save them," he said firmly. "Save all of them. I don't care what it takes." As Dr. Anderson rushed away, Ryan sank into a waiting room chair, head in his hands. Edward sat beside him in silence. Around them, the hospital bustled with activity, but they remained frozen in their private vigil, 2 men from feuding families united by love for the same woman. Through the window, dawn was breaking over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere beyond those operating room doors, Mia was fighting for her life and the lives of their unborn children. The next few hours would either heal their broken family or shatter it beyond repair. Ryan Matthews had always been the outlier in his middle-class family from suburban Connecticut. While his siblings followed their father into teaching and his mother's small accounting practice, Ryan dreamed bigger. Growing up in their modest three-bedroom house, he spent countless nights studying by flashlight, determined to break free from the cycle of comfortable mediocrity that seemed to define the Matthews family legacy. His father, James Matthews, never understood his youngest son's ambition. "The Matthews aren't meant for high society," he would say, shaking his head as Ryan pored over business magazines and investment reports. His mother, Ellen, worried constantly that Ryan's dreams would only lead to disappointment. His older brother Mark openly mocked his aspirations, while his sister Sarah quietly pitied what she saw as delusions of grandeur. But Ryan refused to be constrained by their limited expectations. Through sheer determination, he earned a scholarship to Princeton, where he graduated summa cum laude in business and finance. His family didn't attend the graduation ceremony. His father claimed they couldn't afford the trip. But Ryan knew the real reason was their discomfort with his growing success. After Princeton, Ryan took an entry-level position at Goldman Sachs, living in a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn. While his colleagues spent their bonuses on designer clothes and nights out in Manhattan, Ryan lived frugally, saving every penny. By day, he learned the intricacies of corporate finance. By night, he developed his own investment strategies, studying market patterns until his eyes burned. His big break came when he identified a struggling retail chain with hidden potential. Convincing a group of investors to back him, Ryan orchestrated a leveraged buyout that transformed the company into a billion-dollar enterprise. By 30, he had founded Matthews Capital, turning it into one of Wall Street's most respected investment firms. Success brought wealth beyond his wildest dreams: the penthouse overlooking Central Park, the Hampton estate, the private jet. But it also brought crushing loneliness. His family remained distant, uncomfortable with his wealth and what they saw as his abandonment of their values. His father refused to accept any financial help, calling it charity. His mother's Christmas cards were always signed formally "Best Wishes, James and Ellen Matthews." Relationships proved equally challenging. Women were attracted to his success, but few looked beyond it to see the person beneath. He dated socialites, models, and fellow executives, but each relationship felt hollow, built on the foundation of his bank account rather than genuine connection. His last girlfriend, a prominent fashion designer, had ended things by telling him he was emotionally unavailable, too focused on work to build a real relationship. Even his closest friends seemed to want something from him. Every dinner invitation came with an investment pitch, every charity gala with a request for donations. In his luxurious penthouse, surrounded by expensive art and designer furniture, Ryan often found himself missing the simple family dinners of his childhood, when success was measured not in dollars but in moments shared. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had achieved everything he'd dreamed of as that ambitious teenager in Connecticut, yet happiness remained elusive. His days were filled with board meetings, investment decisions, and charity galas, but his nights were solitary affairs spent looking out over the glittering city that had given him everything except what he truly wanted: genuine connection, understanding, love. As his 35th birthday approached, Ryan found himself at a crossroads. His company was thriving, his wealth continuing to grow, but the emptiness inside him seemed to deepen with each passing day. He had proven his family wrong about the Matthews family's potential for success, but perhaps they had been right about something else. Maybe there were more important things in life than climbing the social ladder and accumulating wealth. Little did he know that fate was about to intervene in the most unexpected way, bringing him face to face with someone who would challenge everything he thought he knew about success, happiness, and the true meaning of wealth. Maria Mia Castellanos once had everything a young woman could dream of. As the daughter of Edward Castellanos, founder of Castellanos Investment Group, she grew up in a sprawling Silicon Valley mansion, attended Switzerland's finest boarding schools, and moved in the highest circles of society. But beneath the glittering surface lay a growing unease with the privilege that defined her existence. Unlike her socialite peers, Mia found herself drawn to the business side of her father's empire. While other heiresses shopped on Rodeo Drive, she sat in on board meetings, absorbing everything she could about finance and investment strategies. Edward beamed with pride when she graduated from Stanford Business School with honors, seeing in his daughter the heir apparent to his financial kingdom. The fall came swiftly and without mercy. In 2008, as markets crashed worldwide, whispers began about Castellanos Investment Group's exposure to toxic assets. Mia, then working as a junior analyst at the firm, discovered irregularities in their books. She brought her concerns to her father, but Edward, confident in his strategies, dismissed her warnings. When the truth finally emerged, it was devastating. Castellanos Investment Group had been over-leveraged, its clients' money tied up in risky investments that imploded during the financial crisis. The SEC investigation that followed revealed that while Edward hadn't committed fraud, his reckless management had destroyed billions in client wealth. Overnight, the Castellanos name became synonymous with failure. Their assets were frozen, the mansion seized, and their social circle evaporated. Mia watched helplessly as her mother, Catherine, suffered a nervous breakdown, unable to cope with their fall from grace. The final blow came when her younger sister, Emma, attempted suicide, unable to face her classmates' cruel taunts. Determined to protect what remained of her family, Mia made a decision that broke her heart. She would disappear, change her name, and build a new life far from the ruins of their former glory. With only a few $1,000s saved from her analyst days, she moved to New York City, became Mia Ramirez, and took a job waiting tables at an upscale restaurant in Manhattan. The transition from privilege to poverty was brutal. Her first apartment was a tiny studio in Queens, shared with 2 other waitresses. She learned to navigate the subway system, to budget for groceries, to appreciate the simple luxury of a hot shower. Her manicured hands grew calloused from carrying trays, her designer wardrobe replaced by sensible black work clothes. But amid the hardship, Mia found something unexpected: authenticity. For the first time in her life, people knew her for who she was, not for her family name. Her co-workers became genuine friends, especially Sophie Martinez, a fellow waitress who took Mia under her wing without knowing her true identity. The only shadow in her new life was the weight of her secrets. Every night she called her mother in the California treatment facility, where Catherine was slowly rebuilding her mental health. She sent money to Emma, now living with their aunt in Boston, ensuring her sister could continue her therapy sessions, and she monitored the business news, heart aching as her father tried desperately to clear his name and rebuild from nothing. Mia's greatest fear wasn't poverty or hardship, it was discovery. In her new world of simple pleasures and honest work, she had found a peace she never knew in her privileged past. The thought of losing it all, of having her true identity exposed, haunted her dreams. Yet she couldn't fully embrace her new life while carrying the burden of her past. When Ryan Matthews walked into her restaurant that fateful evening, Mia's carefully constructed world began to tremble. She recognized him immediately. His firm had been one of the vulture funds that had profited from Castellanos Investment Group's collapse. But something in his eyes, a loneliness that matched her own, made her pause. For the first time since her self-imposed exile, Mia felt the stirring of something dangerous: hope. Alex Thompson cultivated an image of the perfect best friend and business partner. To the outside world, he was Ryan Matthews' loyal right-hand man, the steady force behind Matthews Capital's meteoric rise. His Brooks Brothers suits, perfectly styled hair, and winning smile graced the covers of business magazines alongside Ryan, the two of them hailed as Wall Street's dynamic duo. But beneath his polished exterior lurked a darkness born of jealousy, resentment, and unrequited love. Their friendship began at Princeton, where Alex had first spotted Ryan in their advanced financial theory class. While other students struggled, Ryan seemed to grasp complex concepts effortlessly. Alex, the son of a Boston banking family, recognized in Ryan the raw talent and ambition that he himself lacked. He made himself indispensable, offering notes, connections, and unwavering support. When Ryan founded Matthews Capital, Alex was the first person he called. Together, they built the firm from scratch, working endless hours in a tiny office in downtown Manhattan. But while Ryan's star rose, Alex remained in his shadow. At every client meeting, every press conference, every industry event, it was Ryan who commanded attention. Alex watched, smiled, and silently seethed. His obsession with Mia began the moment she walked into their lives. He recognized her immediately, Maria Castellanos, the fallen princess of Silicon Valley. Alex had been closely involved in Matthews Capital's acquisition of Castellanos' assets during the financial crisis. He had seen her photo in the due diligence files, read reports of her attempts to warn her father about the impending collapse. Something about her vulnerability, combined with her hidden strength, awakened feelings he hadn't known he possessed. Watching Ryan fall in love with Mia was torture. Alex saw how she looked at Ryan with the same admiration and devotion that Alex himself had always felt for his friend. Each time Ryan mentioned Mia in conversation, each time Alex saw them together at corporate events, the knife twisted deeper. He began investigating her background obsessively, telling himself it was to protect Ryan and the firm, but knowing in his heart it was something darker. The truth about Mia's identity should have been his perfect weapon. Alex planned to expose her at the right moment, destroying her relationship with Ryan and positioning himself as the loyal friend who had protected the firm's interests. But as he gathered evidence, he discovered something unexpected: proof that Edward Castellanos had been right all along. The financial crisis that destroyed his firm had been artificially accelerated by certain traders, including some within Matthews Capital. And this information became Alex's secret obsession. Late at night, in his corner office overlooking Manhattan, he pieced together the puzzle. Some of the trades had been authorized by Ryan himself, though Alex was certain his friend hadn't understood their full impact. The revelation presented both opportunity and danger. If handled correctly, it could give Alex everything he wanted: control of the firm, revenge against Ryan, and perhaps even Mia herself. His plan required patience. Alex played the supportive friend perfectly, offering Ryan advice about Mia, all while documenting every aspect of their relationship. He began manipulating the firm's records, creating a paper trail that would implicate Ryan in deliberate wrongdoing during the Castellanos collapse. Each move was calculated, each piece positioned with the precision of a chess master. The wedding would be his masterpiece. Alex had arranged for certain board members to be present, key investors who would react badly to the revelation of Ryan's connection to the Castellanos scandal. The media would be tipped off at the perfect moment. The ensuing chaos would allow Alex to step in, save the firm, and emerge as the hero. Yet even as he plotted, Alex was tormented by doubts. He had seen the genuine love between Ryan and Mia, witnessed moments of tenderness that made his carefully constructed plans feel hollow. Sometimes, in rare moments of clarity, he recognized his own madness. But then he would remember every slight, every moment Ryan had overshadowed him, every time Mia had looked past him to smile at his friend, and his resolve would harden. The stage was set. All Alex had to do was wait for the perfect moment to strike, never suspecting that his carefully laid plans would unravel in ways he could never have anticipated. But the Matthews and Castellanos families existed in parallel universes within America's social hierarchy, their paths destined to collide in ways neither could have predicted. The Matthews clan, rooted in middle-class Connecticut values, viewed wealth with suspicion and ambition with distrust. The Castellanos dynasty, built on old money and newer tech fortunes, operated in a world where success was measured in billions and influence extended to the highest levels of society. James Matthews, a high school history teacher for 30 years, had instilled in his children a deep skepticism of the wealthy elite. His wife Ellen's small accounting practice served local businesses and families, reinforcing their belief in honest, modest work. Their oldest son, Mark, followed his father into teaching, while daughter Sarah became a nurse. Only Ryan dared to break the mold, creating a rift that widened with each zero added to his bank account. Family dinners at the Matthews home became increasingly tense affairs. Ryan's attempts to share his success, offers to pay off the mortgage, suggestions of family vacations, generous Christmas gifts were met with quiet resistance or outright rejection. His mother would change the subject whenever business came up, while his father maintained a studied silence about his youngest son's career. Across the country, the Castellanos family had embodied a different kind of dysfunction. Edward Castellanos, brilliant but arrogant, had built his empire through aggressive expansion and calculated risks. His wife Catherine came from old San Francisco money, adding social prestige to his financial power. They raised their daughters, Mia and Emma, to believe that excellence was the minimum expectation. The relationship between the family's businesses was equally complex. Matthews Capital's rise coincided with Castellanos Investment Group's vulnerability during the financial crisis. While Ryan saw the acquisition of Castellanos' assets as smart business strategy, Edward viewed it as a personal attack. The media painted it as a classic Wall Street drama, the young upstart taking down the established player. Behind the headlines, personal relationships frayed and twisted. Catherine Castellanos had once moved in the same social circles as Ryan's early girlfriends, creating awkward encounters at charity galas. Emma Castellanos attended the same prep school as Sarah Matthews' daughter, though neither family acknowledged the connection. The business world of New York was surprisingly small, and the shadows of their rivalry touched everything. Sarah Matthews, despite her outward disapproval of Ryan's lifestyle, secretly kept a scrapbook of his press coverage. Emma Castellanos followed Matthews Capital's success with obsessive interest, perhaps seeking to understand the force that had destroyed her family. These hidden connections formed a web of unspoken tensions and unacknowledged links between the families. The corporate landscape surrounding both families was equally charged. Former Castellanos executives whispered about revenge, while Matthews Capital partners worried about potential scandals. Every business decision, every social interaction was colored by the history between the families. Investment banks took sides, law firms carefully managed conflicts of interest, and society columnists watched for any sign of interaction between the two dynasties. The announcement of Ryan and Mia's relationship sent shockwaves through this carefully balanced ecosystem. Old grudges resurfaced, alliances shifted, and both families faced internal turmoil. James Matthews worried about his son being manipulated, while Edward Castellanos feared his daughter was being used as a pawn in a larger game. Added to this volatile mix was the Thompson family's influence. Alex's father, Richard Thompson, sat on the boards of several major banks and had his own complex history with both families. The elder Thompson had once mentored Edward Castellanos and later advised Ryan during Matthews Capital's early days. His son's position between the two families added another layer of complexity to an already intricate situation. The imminent marriage of Ryan and Mia threatened to either heal these ancient wounds or tear them open even wider. Society watchers predicted either the merger of the century or the scandal of the decade. No one suspected that the truth would be far more complicated, or that the real threat to both families' happiness lurked not in their past rivalries, but in the present, in the form of a trusted friend harboring secret desires and deadly ambitions. The evening that changed everything began like any other at La Maison, an intimate French restaurant tucked away in Manhattan's Upper East Side. Mia smoothed her black waitress uniform, her once manicured hands now bearing the subtle calluses of someone who carried trays for a living. The restaurant's soft lighting and elegant decor provided the perfect backdrop for the city's elite to conduct their business affairs and romantic liaisons. Ryan Matthews hadn't planned to dine at La Maison that night. A cancelled meeting left him with a rare free evening, and something, perhaps fate, perhaps simple hunger, drew him to the small restaurant he'd passed countless times but never entered. As he stepped through the door, the maitre d' recognized him immediately, whisking him to the best table by the window. Mia's heart nearly stopped when she saw him. Ryan Matthews, the man whose firm had acquired the remains of her family's company. She had studied his career obsessively during those dark days, watching as Matthews' capital rose to prominence partly on the ruins of Castellano's investment group. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she was no longer Maria Castellanos, but simply Mia Ramirez, an ordinary waitress. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to La Maison." Her voice was steady, professional, betraying none of the turmoil beneath. "May I suggest starting with our house champagne?" Ryan looked up, and their eyes met. Later he would tell friends that something shifted in that moment, like the world tilting slightly on its axis. There was an intelligence in her eyes that caught him off guard, a quiet dignity that seemed at odds with her role. Actually, he found himself saying, "I'd love your personal recommendation. What would you choose?" The question surprised her. Most patrons of her status barely acknowledged her existence beyond placing their orders. "Well," she ventured, "if you're interested in something unique, we have a remarkable Chateau Neuf du Pape. It's not on the menu, but our sommelier has been saving it for someone who would truly appreciate it." Ryan was intrigued, not just by the suggestion, but by the way she pronounced the French name perfectly, how she spoke about wine with genuine knowledge rather than rehearsed phrases. "You seem to know your wines well," he observed. A shadow flickered across her face. "I've had opportunities to learn," she said carefully. "The chef has also prepared an excellent coquille vin tonight that would pair beautifully with it." Throughout the meal, Ryan found himself engaging Mia in conversation whenever she approached his table. She spoke about food, wine, and art with surprising sophistication. He noticed how other staff members deferred to her subtle authority, how she anticipated guests' needs before they arose. There was a story here, he sensed, something deeper than appearances suggested. For Mia, each interaction was a delicate dance. She needed to maintain her cover while fighting the unexpected attraction she felt toward this man. His genuine interest in her opinions, the way he listened intently to her suggestions, the respect with which he treated all the staff, it contradicted everything she had assumed about him from afar. As the evening drew to a close, Ryan lingered over his coffee. The restaurant had nearly emptied, and Mia was finishing her closing duties. Finally, gathering his courage, he waited until she passed his table one last time. "I hope this isn't too forward," he said, "but would you like to get coffee sometime? Just to talk more about wine, art, or whatever you'd like?" Mia froze. Every instinct told her to refuse, to protect her carefully constructed new life. But something in his eyes, a mixture of hope and vulnerability, made her hesitate. That would be nice, she heard herself say, but just coffee. They exchanged numbers, both feeling the weight of something significant beginning. As Ryan left the restaurant, he felt lighter than he had in years. Mia watched him go, her heart racing with equal parts excitement and fear. Neither could have known that this simple dinner would set in motion events that would reshape both their lives forever. Their first coffee date turned into a 3-hour conversation at a small cafe in Greenwich Village. Ryan arrived to find Mia already there, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater that somehow made her more beautiful than in her waitress uniform. She had chosen a quiet corner table, away from the window, a detail he would only later understand the significance of. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on everything from classical literature to modern art. Ryan found himself captivated by Mia's insights, the way she could discuss Dickens one moment and debate contemporary economics the next. When she spoke about her passion for helping others, describing her volunteer work at a local women's shelter, he saw a depth of compassion that made his heart ache. For Mia, each moment with Ryan was both wonderful and terrifying. She carefully edited her stories, transforming her childhood in Silicon Valley to a more modest upbringing in San Francisco, turning her Stanford education into night classes at a community college. Yet the essence of who she was, her values, her dreams, her heart remained truthful. Their dates became more frequent. Ryan took her to small, out-of-the-way restaurants rather than the high-profile establishments he usually frequented. He told himself it was because Mia seemed more comfortable in intimate settings, but part of him enjoyed the anonymity, the freedom to be himself, rather than Ryan Matthews, Wall Street titan. Mia introduced him to a different New York little bookstores hidden in basement shops, street art in forgotten alleys, rooftop gardens unknown to tourists. In these secret spaces they built their own world. Ryan found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone: his fears of becoming like the cold, wealthy men he'd grown up despising, his loneliness despite his success. Their first kiss happened in the rain, after a documentary screening at a tiny independent theater. Neither had brought an umbrella, and they ran laughing through the downpour. Under the awning of a closed antique shop, Ryan pulled Mia close, and the world seemed to stop as their lips met. But secrets have a way of casting shadows. When Ryan suggested taking Mia to a charity gala, she declined, claiming she didn't own suitable clothes. When he offered to buy her a dress, she grew distant, making excuses about work commitments. But each time he tried to integrate her into his public life, she found subtle ways to maintain their privacy. Sophie, Mia's fellow waitress and closest friend, watched their relationship grow with increasing concern. "You're playing with fire," she warned one night as they closed the restaurant. "The longer you wait to tell him the truth, the worse it will be." Mia knew Sophie was right, but every time she tried to confess, something held her back. She would see Ryan's face light up when he talked about their future, feel the gentle way he held her hand, and the fear of losing it all would overwhelm her. Ryan, too, sensed there was something Mia wasn't telling him. He noticed how she tensed when certain names were mentioned, how she avoided being photographed, how she sometimes got lost in thought with a sadness he couldn't quite understand. But her love felt so real, so pure, that he pushed his questions aside. Their relationship deepened despite the unspoken truths between them. Ryan found himself dreaming of a future with Mia, imagining a life filled with the genuine warmth and connection he'd always craved. Mia allowed herself to hope that perhaps her past didn't matter, that the love they shared could overcome any revelation. One evening, as they walked along the Hudson River at sunset, Ryan stopped and turned to Mia. "I love you," he said simply. "I know there are things you're not ready to tell me, and that's okay. I love who you are, here and now." Mia's eyes filled with tears as she whispered back, "I love you too." In that moment she almost told him everything, but the words stuck in her throat, and the moment passed, leaving her secret still untold, a time bomb ticking beneath their happiness. Neither could have known that their time in this private paradise was running out, that forces beyond their control were already in motion to shatter their carefully constructed world. Alex Thompson first learned about Mia during a casual lunch with Ryan at their usual corner table at the Capitol Grill. As Ryan spoke about this fascinating waitress he'd met, Alex noticed something he hadn't seen in his friend's eyes for years: genuine excitement, vulnerability, hope. It made his stomach turn. A waitress, Alex kept his tone carefully neutral, masking his immediate recognition of who she really was. "That's different for you. What did you say her name was again?" "Mia Ramirez," Ryan replied, missing the slight narrowing of Alex's eyes at the full surname. "There's just something about her, Alex. She's different from anyone I've ever met." That evening, Alex stayed late in his office, pulling up old files from the Castellanos Investment Group acquisition. There she was, Maria Castellanos, the fallen princess of Silicon Valley, now serving drinks to the very people who had destroyed her family's empire. The irony would have been amusing if it hadn't threatened everything Alex had worked for. He began his manipulation subtly. During board meetings, he would casually mention the importance of public image, reminding everyone how quickly scandals could derail even the most successful companies. "Remember the Castellanos disaster," he would say, watching Ryan from the corner of his eye. "One wrong association can destroy decades of reputation." At social events, Alex made sure to steer important clients away from any venue where Mia worked. He began dropping hints to Ryan about other suitable women, daughters of business associates, accomplished executives, people from their world. Each suggestion was carefully framed as friendly concern. "I just want you to be happy, Ryan," he would say, playing the role of devoted friend perfectly. "But you have to think about the bigger picture. The board, our investors, they expect certain things from someone in your position." When Ryan spoke about bringing Mia to corporate events, Alex would gently discourage it. "Maybe give it more time," he'd suggest. "You don't want to rush things. Have you noticed how she avoids being photographed? Don't you find that odd?" He started building a dossier on Mia, gathering evidence of her true identity while simultaneously creating a paper trail that suggested more sinister motivations for her interest in Ryan. Anonymous tips reached certain board members about Ryan's increasing distraction, his unusual relationship with a mysterious woman who seemed to have appeared from nowhere. Alex took particular pleasure in befriending Sophie, Mia's co-worker at the restaurant. Under the guise of checking up on his friend's happiness, he would visit when Ryan wasn't there, leaving generous tips and showing genuine interest in the staff's lives. Through these conversations, he gleaned precious details about Mia's routine, her fears, her vulnerabilities. The most delicate part of his plan involved Ryan's family. Through careful comments and orchestrated coincidences, Alex ensured that rumors of Ryan's relationship with a waitress reached his status-conscious mother. He knew Ellen Matthews' disapproval would add another layer of pressure to the already precarious situation. But Alex's masterstroke was his manipulation of the business itself. He began subtly undermining Ryan's decision-making, creating small problems that required increasing attention, ensuring that Ryan had less and less time for Mia. Each crisis was carefully manufactured to seem natural, each solution requiring Ryan to choose between his personal life and the company's welfare. Throughout it all, Alex maintained his facade of supportive friendship. He was there with understanding words when Ryan missed dates due to urgent meetings, ready with practical advice when Ryan expressed doubts about the relationship's future. Like a spider weaving its web, Alex created a complex network of doubts, pressures, and obligations that slowly began to strain Ryan and Mia's relationship. Yet even Alex couldn't have predicted how deeply Ryan would fall in love with Mia, or how his own feelings for her would complicate his carefully laid plans. Watching them together, seeing the genuine happiness they shared, sometimes made his hand falter. But then he would remember his own dreams, his own desires, and his resolve would strengthen. The stage was being set, the players moving into position. Soon, Alex knew the perfect moment would come to spring his trap and tear their world apart. Mia sat on the edge of her bathroom tub, staring at the third pregnancy test she'd taken that morning. Like the others, it showed 2 clear pink lines. Her hands trembled as she checked the time again, 6:15 a.m. Outside her small apartment window, New York was just beginning to wake up. She had suspected for a few weeks, but between the mounting pressure at work and her growing anxiety about her relationship with Ryan, she'd attributed her symptoms to stress. Now, faced with undeniable evidence, a mix of terror and inexplicable joy washed over her. Sophie arrived within 20 minutes of receiving Mia's desperate text. Finding her friend curled up on the bathroom floor, she immediately understood. "Oh, honey," she whispered, pulling Mia into a tight embrace. "Have you told him yet?" "How can I?" Mia's voice cracked. "I haven't even told him who I really am. And now this? He'll think I planned it, that I'm trying to trap him." The irony of a former heiress being suspected of gold digging wasn't lost on her. But life had other plans. That evening, as Mia prepared for her shift at the restaurant, Ryan surprised her with an impromptu visit. He found her in the kitchen, looking pale and distracted. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "You've seemed off these past few days." Looking into his worried eyes, Mia felt her carefully constructed walls crumbling. "I'm pregnant," she blurted out, then immediately covered her mouth, shocked by her own directness. Ryan stood frozen for a moment, processing her words. Then, to Mia's absolute astonishment, a smile slowly spread across his face. "Pregnant," he repeated, his voice filled with wonder rather than accusation. "We're going to have a baby." His reaction broke something in Mia. She began to cry, overwhelmed by relief and a fresh wave of guilt. Ryan pulled her close, misinterpreting her tears as happiness mixed with hormones. "This is wonderful," he whispered into her hair. "You're wonderful. We're going to be parents." The next few days passed in a blur of doctor's appointments and quiet celebrations. Ryan insisted on the best obstetric care, though Mia managed to convince him to use a smaller, less prominent practice than the high-profile doctors he initially suggested. Her first ultrasound revealed an even bigger surprise: twins. 2 heartbeats, the doctor announced, pointing to the screen. Both strong and healthy. Ryan gripped Mia's hand tighter, his eyes glistening with tears. Mia stared at the fuzzy images, her heart swelling with love for these tiny lives while simultaneously aching with the weight of her secrets. Ryan threw himself into preparation with characteristic intensity. He began researching the best pediatricians, reading every parenting book he could find, and making plans for a future that seemed to grow brighter by the day. He spoke of moving Mia into his penthouse, of nursery designs and private schools. Each gesture of love and excitement was like a knife in Mia's heart. She knew she needed to tell him the truth before someone else did, but the joy in his eyes made it impossible. How could she risk destroying this happiness? How could she bear to see his love turn to betrayal? Sophie watched it all with growing concern. "The pregnancy makes it more urgent, not less," she advised. "He needs to know everything before the babies come." "You know that, right?" Mia did know. She also knew that her time was running out in more ways than one. Her growing belly would soon make it impossible to work at the restaurant, forcing changes she wasn't ready to face. The wealthy circles Ryan inhabited would eventually recognize her, especially as their relationship became more public. Yet in those early weeks of pregnancy, despite her fears and guilt, Mia allowed herself to dream. She imagined a future where the truth didn't matter, where love would be enough to bridge any divide. Ryan's happiness was infectious, his excitement about fatherhood touching something deep within her soul. But in quiet moments when Ryan was absorbed in his baby books or talking to her still flat stomach, Mia felt the shadow of her past looming ever closer. The clock was ticking, and she knew that soon she would have to choose between her secrets and her future. The Hampton estate glowed in the early morning sunlight, white roses and lilies adorning every surface. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and flowers as wedding staff made final preparations for what society magazines were already calling the wedding of the year. In her bridal suite, Mia stood before a full-length mirror, her wedding gown a masterpiece of silk and lace, her small baby bump barely visible beneath the carefully structured bodice. Sophie fussed with the train, fighting back tears. "You look like a princess," she said, then caught herself as Mia's face fell slightly at the words. They both knew Mia had once been exactly that, a different kind of princess in a different life. "I have to tell him," Mia whispered, touching her stomach where her twins grew, "before the ceremony. I can't let him find out from someone else." But Sophie knew, as did Mia, that it was already too late. The wheels had been set in motion hours earlier, in a different part of the estate. Alex Thompson stood in Ryan's dressing room, watching his friend adjust his bow tie. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice laden with false concern. The envelope in his inner pocket felt heavy, like a weapon primed to fire. "Never been more sure of anything," Ryan replied, his face glowing with happiness. "Mia is everything I've ever wanted. She's real, Alex. No pretenses, no hidden agendas. Just pure, honest love." The words struck Alex like physical blows. Pure. Honest. If only Ryan knew. "There's something you need to see," he said quietly, pulling out the envelope. I didn't want to do this today, but as your friend, as your business partner, I can't let you make this mistake. Across the estate, guests were beginning to arrive. The Matthews family sat stiffly in the front row, still uncomfortable with the lavishness surrounding them. Ellen Matthews clutched her husband's hand, watching as New York's elite filtered in, each guest more glamorous than the last. In her suite, Mia felt the first flutter of panic as she noticed familiar faces through her window. Former business associates of her father, society matrons who had once welcomed her family into their homes, all now potential harbingers of her downfall. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, desperate to reach Ryan before it was too late. But in his dressing room, Ryan was already staring at the documents Alex had provided. Photos of Maria Castellanos at society events years ago. Financial records showing the connection between Matthews Capital and the fall of Castellanos Investment Group. Newspaper clippings documenting her family's disgrace. But she's been lying to you, Ryan. Alex's voice came from far away. Everything about her is a lie. She's Edward Castellanos' daughter. The same Castellanos who accused you of destroying his company. This whole relationship, it has to be about revenge. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Ryan's hands shook as he read report after report, each piece of evidence shattering his perception of the woman he loved. No, he whispered. There has to be an explanation. Think about it, Alex pressed. How did she just happen to be working at that restaurant? How did she just happen to catch your attention? Nothing about this has been accidental. The wedding march began to play, its joyful notes now seeming like a mockery. Guests turned in their seats as the doors opened, expecting to see a radiant bride. Instead, they saw Ryan striding down the aisle, his face a mask of fury and pain, Alex close behind him. Mia was just stepping out of her suite when Ryan appeared at the end of the hallway. One look at his face told her everything. Ryan, she began, her voice breaking. Please let me explain. Explain what his voice was ice. How you've been lying to me from the moment we met. How this whole relationship has been a carefully orchestrated revenge plot. Or should you explain how you're carrying my children as part of your scheme? The corridor fell silent, save for the distant sound of the ocean. Sophie stepped forward protectively, but Mia gently pushed her aside. It wasn't like that she pleaded. Yes, I lied about my name, about my past, but my love for you is real. The babies. The babies, Ryan cut her off, his voice cracking. Were they part of your plan too? A way to ensure your connection to Matthews Capital? To finally get your revenge for what happened to your family? Tears streamed down Mia's face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. I never wanted revenge. I just wanted to be loved for who I am, not for my name or my past. Everything between us has been real. But Ryan was already turning away, his shoulders rigid with pain and betrayal. Alex stood in the background, his face a mask of sympathy that didn't quite reach his eyes. The wedding guests, hearing the commotion, began to whisper and point. As Ryan walked away, Mia sank to her knees, her white dress pooling around her like fallen snow. Sophie held her as she sobbed, while through the windows, photographers who had somehow gotten wind of the drama captured every moment of her humiliation. The Hampton estate, so recently decorated for joy, became the stage for tragedy. And somewhere in the distance, the ocean waves continued their eternal rhythm, indifferent to the hearts breaking on its shores. The headlines exploded across New York the next morning. Wall Street titan jilts Castellanos heiress at altar, screamed the Post. Revenge romance rocks financial world, declared the Daily News. Photos of Mia in her wedding dress, crumpled and crying, splashed across every tabloid in the city. Social media erupted with speculation, theories, and cruel memes. Ellen Matthews sat at her kitchen table in Connecticut, hands shaking as she read the coverage. I knew something wasn't right about that girl, she told her husband James, who stood silently staring out the window. But this is worse than we imagined. She could have destroyed everything Ryan's built. Sarah Matthews, Ryan's sister, saw things differently. Having worked as an ER nurse, she recognized genuine pain when she saw it. The photos of Mia's devastation struck a chord. "Have any of you actually asked Ryan what happened?" she demanded during a tense family dinner. "Or are we all just assuming the worst because of her last name?" Across the country, in a private rehabilitation facility in Northern California, Catherine Castellanos watched the news coverage with horror. Her hands trembled so badly that she dropped her teacup, porcelain shattering on the floor like her daughter's dreams. Her doctors worried about her relapse into depression. Emma Castellanos, away at college in Boston, faced her own nightmare as classmates whispered and pointed. She stopped attending classes, unable to bear the pitying looks and malicious gossip. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from so-called friends seeking insider information about her sister's scheme. Edward Castellanos, living in a modest apartment in San Francisco, faced reporters camping outside his building. "My daughter is not a gold digger," he told them firmly, his voice carrying the weight of lost dignity. "She has more integrity in her little finger than all of Wall Street combined," but the media twisted his words, painting him as a bitter old man seeking vindication through his daughter. Sophie became Mia's fierce protector, turning away reporters who discovered her tiny apartment, screening endless calls from gossip columnists offering money for inside information. She watched helplessly as her friend barely ate, barely slept, living in a fog of grief and mourning sickness. "They're saying I tried to trap him," Mia whispered one night, curled up on her couch. "That the babies were part of some elaborate revenge plot. How can they think I would use innocent children like that?" Sophie had no answer, could only hold her friend as she wept. The corporate fallout was equally severe. Matthews Capital's stock price fluctuated wildly as investors worried about potential scandals. Board members called emergency meetings, concerned about the company's image. Old allegations about the Castellanos investment group's collapse resurfaced, leading to renewed scrutiny of both families' business dealings. Alex Thompson played his role perfectly, appearing on CNBC as the voice of reason. "This is obviously a difficult personal matter for everyone involved," he said smoothly. "Matthews Capital remains focused on our clients and shareholders." Behind the scenes, he worked to consolidate his position, using the chaos to increase his influence within the company. Ryan retreated to his Hamptons house, ignoring calls from everyone except Alex. He spent hours in his study, drinking too much, rereading old text messages from Mia, trying to separate truth from lies. Every kick of joy they'd shared over the baby's ultrasound, every quiet moment of intimacy, had it all been false? The society circles buzzed with vindictive glee. Women who had once hoped to catch Ryan's eye shared supposedly inside information about Mia's real character. Men who had lost money in the Castellanos collapse years ago felt vindicated, seeing the family name dragged through the mud once again. But not everyone joined the feeding frenzy. A few veteran Wall Street wives, remembering the young Maria Castellanos' kindness during their own social struggles, quietly defended her to their husbands. Several of Ryan's old Princeton classmates, recalling his own ambitious rise from middle-class origins, questioned the rush to judgment. The scandal took an unexpected turn when a former Castellanos Investment Group employee wrote a lengthy LinkedIn post defending Edward Castellanos and revealing that Mia had actually tried to prevent the company's collapse. The post went viral, creating a counter-narrative that complicated the simple revenge story the media preferred. As weeks passed, the immediate furor began to die down, replaced by newer scandals and fresher gossip. But the damage was done. Two families lay in ruins, their private pain transformed into public entertainment. Trust was shattered, reputations were tarnished, and somewhere in the midst of it all, two unborn babies continued to grow, oblivious to the storm surrounding their parents. In her darkest moments, lying awake at night with her hands on her growing belly, Mia wondered if she should have told Ryan everything from the beginning. But then she remembered how people had looked at her after her family's fall, how they'd treated her as either a pariah or a potential lawsuit. Would Ryan have given their love a chance if he'd known who she really was? The question haunted her, much like the paparazzi who still lurked outside her building, waiting for the next chapter in what they called the Castellanos conspiracy, but Mia knew something they didn't. This story was far from over. Her babies deserved the truth, and somehow she would find a way to make things right. Matthews Capital's gleaming offices on Park Avenue buzzed with nervous energy. In the month following the wedding disaster, the company's stock had dropped 15%. Investors were pulling out, citing concerns about leadership stability. Board members whispered about the need for change. Ryan sat in his corner office, staring at spreadsheets that seemed to blur before his eyes. The numbers told a story he didn't want to read: client withdrawals, declining confidence, market share slipping away. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from concerned investors and hostile reporters. "We need to talk," Alex announced, striding into the office without knocking. He laid a stack of papers on Ryan's desk. "The Thompson Group is considering pulling their investment. That's $2 billion, Ryan. We can't afford to lose them." The Thompson Group, Alex's family's company. The irony wasn't lost on Ryan. "What do they want?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "They want assurance of stability. They're suggesting temporary leadership changes while you deal with your personal issues." Alex's voice was carefully neutral, but his eyes gleamed with barely concealed ambition. The crisis deepened as major financial publications began running stories questioning Matthews Capital's future. Matthews' empire on shaky ground, read the Wall Street Journal. Bloomberg ran an analysis piece titled, "Can Matthews Capital Survive Its Founder's Personal Drama?" Long-standing clients began demanding personal meetings, seeking reassurance about their investments. Ryan spent endless hours in conference rooms, repeating the same platitudes about stability and vision while fighting exhaustion and heartbreak. The board called an emergency meeting. In the mahogany-paneled conference room, Ryan faced 12 stern faces, each bearing the same expression of concerned disappointment. "This situation is untenable," the chairman declared. "The market is losing confidence. We need decisive action." Alex presented a restructuring plan that would effectively reduce Ryan's control while maintaining his public role as founder and CEO. "It's temporary," Alex assured the board, "just until things stabilize." The vote was unanimous in favor. Behind the scenes, things were even worse. Junior analysts whispered about mysterious account transfers, questionable trading patterns. Senior executives who had been loyal to Ryan for years suddenly found reasons to distance themselves. Sarah Jenkins, the head of compliance, tried to warn Ryan. "Something's not right with these trades," she said, showing him a series of suspicious transactions. "They all trace back to shell companies, but the paperwork is perfect, too perfect." But Ryan was too consumed by personal turmoil to see the pattern. Each news story about Mia, each paparazzi photo of her growing baby bump, sent him into a spiral of confusion and pain. He began making mistakes, missing important meetings, losing focus during crucial presentations. The crisis reached a new level when an anonymous source leaked details of Matthews Capital's involvement in the original Castellanos investment group collapse. The document suggested possible manipulation of market conditions to force the older firm's failure. Markets reacted immediately. Matthews Capital's stock plunged another 20% in a single day. Trading was temporarily halted as panic spread through the financial sector. Alex moved quickly to contain the damage, giving interviews about the company's strong fundamentals and promising an internal investigation. But privately, he used the chaos to consolidate power, replacing key personnel with his own allies. Ryan watched helplessly as the company he'd built began slipping through his fingers. The board stripped him of operational control, leaving him as little more than a figurehead. His security clearance was quietly revoked, his access to certain files restricted. In a cruel twist, some of the same traders who had helped bring down Castellanos' investment group now circled Matthews Capital, sensing weakness. Short sellers began targeting the company's stock, accelerating its decline. "You need to take a leave of absence," Alex finally suggested during a late-night meeting. "For your own good and for the company's. Let me handle things until this blows over." Ryan stared out his office window at the Manhattan skyline, remembering another night years ago when he'd stood in this same spot, dreaming of building something lasting. Now it was all crumbling, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial. The final blow came when the SEC announced an informal inquiry into Matthews Capital's trading practices. The announcement sent the stock into free fall. Ryan's personal wealth, mostly tied to company stock, dropped by hundreds of millions in a matter of hours. In the midst of the chaos, a junior analyst tried to bring Ryan documentation of irregular trading patterns dating back months before the wedding scandal, but Alex intercepted the report, burying it in bureaucratic red tape. As Ryan signed the paperwork for his temporary leave of absence, he failed to notice Alex's small smile of triumph. The company Ryan had built from nothing was now in the hands of a man he thought was his best friend, while its true enemies operated in shadows he couldn't see. Mia's tiny apartment had become her fortress and her prison. At 4 months pregnant, her growing belly made it impossible to continue working at the restaurant. Her savings were dwindling, and job applications were met with polite rejections or uncomfortable silences when employers recognized her name from the headlines. Every attempt to contact Ryan was blocked. His phone number was changed, her emails went unanswered, and his building security had strict instructions not to let her near his penthouse. The only news she had of him came from tabloid headlines and business sections that documented his professional downfall. Sophie watched her friend's isolation with growing concern. Mia barely ate, spending long hours staring out her window at the city below. The only time she showed any animation was during her prenatal checkups, where she learned the twins were boys. "They're healthy," she told Sophie, touching her belly gently. "That's all that matters now." Ryan's rejection manifested in more tangible ways. Legal papers arrived, demanding paternity tests and suggesting terms for financial support that read more like a business contract than an arrangement for their children. The lawyer's cold language made it clear Ryan wanted nothing to do with Mia beyond his legal obligations. The isolation deepened when Mia's former social circle began taking sides. Women who had once been her closest friends now crossed the street to avoid her. Her phone stopped ringing. Even her favorite coffee shop, where she'd spent countless mornings, suddenly became uncomfortable as other customers whispered and pointed. Her family's attempts to help only made things worse. Edward Castellanos tried to defend her in the press, but his statements were twisted to support the narrative of a family revenge plot. Her mother's emotional state deteriorated so severely that her doctors recommended against any contact with Mia. Emma's desperate attempts to visit were thwarted by their mother's doctors, who feared the stress would trigger another breakdown. Ryan, meanwhile, buried his pain in isolation of a different kind. He retreated to his Hamptons house, ignoring his family's attempts to reach out. His father's awkward messages about learning from mistakes and his mother's hints about more suitable matches only pushed him further into solitude. The twins became an obsession for both of them, though in different ways. Mia attended every doctor's appointment religiously, talking to her sons, playing them classical music, determined they would know they were loved regardless of the circumstances. Ryan compulsively read every medical report his lawyers obtained, but couldn't bring himself to attend any appointments, afraid of facing Mia and the truth she represented. One rainy evening, Mia hit rock bottom. Her electricity was cut off due to unpaid bills, and she sat in darkness, eating cold soup straight from the can. Sophie found her like that, broke down crying, and insisted Mia move in with her. "You're not alone," Sophie declared. "These babies will have at least one family that loves them." The same night, Ryan sat in his dark study, drinking scotch and staring at the ultrasound pictures his lawyers had procured. 2 tiny profiles already showing distinct features. His sons. The thought both thrilled and terrified him. How could he love something born from such betrayal? But how could he not love his own children? The situation reached a breaking point when Mia experienced complications in her 5th month. The hospital tried to contact Ryan as next of kin, but his staff intercepted the messages. By the time he learned about it, days later, Mia had already been discharged, having faced the fear and pain alone. This incident sparked the first crack in Ryan's armor of rejection. He found himself driving past Mia's apartment late at night, watching the light in her window, wondering about the 3 lives inside. But each time he considered reaching out, Alex's voice would echo in his head, reminding him of the betrayal, the lies, the potential damage to everything he'd built. Mia's isolation was broken only by Sophie's steadfast friendship and the unexpected kindness of strangers. A group of waitresses from her old restaurant started bringing her home cooked meals. An elderly neighbor offered to teach her knitting to pass the long hours. Small gestures that kept her from completely losing hope. But the nights were the hardest. Both Mia and Ryan lay awake in their separate beds, miles apart yet consumed by the same thoughts. Each kick from the twins was a reminder of what they'd lost, what might have been, and what still could be if only they could find a way past the wall of pain and mistrust between them. 6 months pregnant, Mia sat at Sophie's kitchen table surrounded by old financial documents and newspaper clippings. Her laptop displayed multiple spreadsheets tracking suspicious transactions from the period of Castellanos Investment Group's collapse. Despite her exhaustion, despite the twins keeping her awake most nights with their constant movement, she kept digging. "You need to rest," Sophie urged, placing a cup of herbal tea beside her. "The doctors said your blood pressure is too high." But Mia couldn't rest. Not when she'd finally started seeing patterns in the data. Her financial training from Stanford, so long buried under her waitress persona, was proving invaluable. The collapse of her father's company hadn't been just bad luck or poor management, there had been manipulation behind the scenes. Living with Sophie had given Mia stability, but finances remained desperate. She'd started an online financial consulting business, working under a pseudonym, but clients were scarce. Most of her remaining savings went to medical bills, ensuring her high-risk pregnancy received proper care. Every morning she walked to the local library, using their computers to avoid being traced. She reached out to former Castellanos employees, piecing together fragments of information. Many were reluctant to talk, fear of Wall Street's power still strong after all these years. But some, remembering the young woman who had tried to warn them, shared what they knew. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Janet Chen, a former compliance officer at Castellanos, reached out through a secure email. "I've kept records," she wrote, "things that never made it into the official investigation. Your father wasn't just a victim, he was targeted." Meeting Janet in a quiet coffee shop in Brooklyn, Mia felt her heart race as she reviewed the documents. Complex trading patterns, shell companies, coordinated market movements, all pointing to a deliberate strategy to weaken Castellanos' investment group. But the mastermind wasn't Ryan or Matthew's capital. The strings had been pulled by someone else. The investigation took its toll. Mia's doctor warned her about preterm labor risks, ordering bed rest. She complied during the day, but at night she continued her research, one hand on her belly as her sons kicked, as if encouraging her to continue. Her father, initially skeptical of her investigation, began contributing his own insights during their weekly phone calls. Edward Castellanos' voice grew stronger as he recalled details he'd previously dismissed. There were meetings he remembered, private conversations I wasn't supposed to know about, people pushing for decisions that didn't make sense at the time. Sophie watched her friend's transformation with mixed emotions. The lost, heartbroken woman was gone, replaced by someone focused and determined. But the physical strain was obvious. Mia had lost weight, despite her pregnancy, dark circles permanent under her eyes. A threatened miscarriage at 7 months forced Mia to slow down. In the hospital, monitored for contractions, she had time to organize her findings. The pattern was clear now. Someone had orchestrated both her father's downfall and the current crisis at Matthews Capital. The same signatures, the same methods, just better hidden. The biggest shock came when she discovered Alex Thompson's connection. His family's investment firm had been heavily involved in both situations, always operating through layers of subsidiaries and partners. The same names kept appearing: shell companies, offshore accounts, mysterious trading partners. He was there, Edward confirmed when Mia called him from her hospital bed. Alex Thompson attended meetings in the final days, always in the background, always watching. I never understood why the son of a major investor would take such interest in routine discussions. Mia's hands trembled as she compiled her evidence into a comprehensive report. The truth was explosive. Alex had engineered her father's downfall as a test run, learning from any mistakes, perfecting his methods for his real target, Matthews Capital. Ryan had been nothing but a pawn, just as her father had been. But proving it would be nearly impossible. Alex had covered his tracks expertly, using his position of trust to manipulate both companies. The few paper trails that existed were buried in complex financial structures designed to discourage investigation. From her hospital bed, Mia made a decision. She began writing 2 documents, one for Ryan, explaining everything about her past and her discoveries, and another for the SEC, detailing Alex's financial manipulations. She knew sending them might destroy any chance of reconciliation with Ryan. He might see it as another attempt at revenge, but she couldn't stay silent. "Are you sure about this?" Sophie asked, watching Mia seal the envelopes. "What if he doesn't believe you?" Mia touched her belly, feeling her sons move beneath her hands. "These babies deserve to know their mother fought for the truth," she said quietly. "Whatever happens, I have to try." In his Hamptons retreat, Ryan sat surrounded by 2 sets of documents. On one side lay the latest reports from his private investigators detailing Mia's current life, her medical appointments, her financial struggles, her move to Sophie's apartment. On the other side were the increasingly troubling financial statements from Matthews Capital, showing patterns he couldn't quite explain. The investigators' photos showed a very different Mia from the vengeful schemer Alex had portrayed. They captured her walking to the library every day, carrying heavy research materials despite her advanced pregnancy. They showed her leaving doctor's appointments alone, face drawn with worry. One photo particularly haunted him: Mia sitting on a park bench, talking to her pregnant belly, tears streaming down her face. Sarah, his sister, had become an unexpected ally in his internal struggle. "You're a doctor's son, Ryan," she reminded him during one of her surprise visits. "Mum and Dad raised us to look for evidence, not jump to conclusions. Have you actually investigated what happened, or just accepted what you were told?" Her words struck a chord. Ryan began reviewing everything about the Castellanos collapse, this time with fresh eyes. He discovered irregularities that had been overlooked in the initial investigations. Trading patterns that made no sense, decisions that seemed forced rather than natural market movements. Late one night, after too many scotches, he finally opened the letter Mia had sent to his office. Her handwriting was familiar, bringing back memories of the love notes she used to leave in his briefcase. The contents, however, were unexpected: detailed financial analysis, transaction records, and a complex web of connections, all pointing to a disturbing conclusion. "I know you may not believe me," she wrote, "but someone orchestrated both my father's downfall and your current crisis. The same methods, the same shell companies, even some of the same players. I'm not asking you to forgive me for my deception, but please investigate this for yourself." Despite his lingering anger and hurt, Ryan's business instincts told him something was wrong at Matthews Capital. The company's decline seemed too coordinated, the problems too perfectly timed. He began his own secret investigation, careful to avoid alerting Alex or the board. A breakthrough came from an unlikely source. His mother, Ellen, the practical accountant, had been reviewing some of the original Castellanos transaction records out of curiosity. "These numbers don't add up," she told him over lunch. Someone was moving money around before the collapse, setting up dominoes to fall. Ryan hired a team of forensic accountants, operating out of a small office in New Jersey to avoid detection. Their findings confirmed his worst fears. Both the Castellanos collapse and Matthews Capital's current crisis showed evidence of market manipulation, executed with increasing sophistication. The revelation about Alex hit him hardest. Evidence suggested his oldest friend had been playing a long game, using both companies as stepping stones for his own ambitions. Ryan remembered countless late-night strategy sessions, wondering now how many of Alex's suggestions had been carefully planned moves in a larger scheme. But proving any of this would be nearly impossible. Alex had covered his tracks expertly, using his intimate knowledge of both companies to hide his manipulations. Any move against him without concrete proof would look like paranoid desperation from a man who'd lost control of his company. Sarah found him one evening, passed out among scattered documents in his study. After helping him to bed, she studied the evidence herself, her medical training giving her a different perspective. Patterns, she mused. In medicine, we look for patterns. And this looks like a disease that's been deliberately spread. The final piece clicked when Ryan received an anonymous email containing trading records from the Thompson family's private investment firm. The patterns matched perfectly with both the Castellanos collapse and Matthews Capital's current troubles. Alex hadn't been working alone, he'd had his family's resources behind him the entire time. Torn between action and caution, Ryan struggled with his next move. The wrong step could destroy what remained of his company, but doing nothing meant watching Alex complete his takeover, using the same methods that had destroyed Mia's family. In his darkest moments, Ryan faced an even harder truth: he had never stopped loving Mia. Every piece of evidence suggesting her innocence felt like both vindication and torture. He had abandoned her when she needed him most, leaving her to face pregnancy alone while he wallowed in wounded pride. The twins became his tipping point. Looking at the latest ultrasound photos, Ryan realized he couldn't let his sons inherit a legacy of lies and manipulation. Whatever the cost, the truth had to come out for them, for Mia, and for himself. Alex Thompson stood at his new corner office window, formerly Ryan's, surveying the Manhattan skyline like a king overlooking his domain. Everything was falling into place, yet small complications kept emerging like persistent weeds in his carefully tended garden. The latest problem sat on his desk: reports that Mia had been visiting former Castellanos employees. His surveillance team noted her frequent trips to the library, her growing collection of financial documents. Despite her advanced pregnancy, she was proving more resourceful and determined than he had anticipated. "She needs to be stopped," Richard Thompson, Alex's father, insisted during their weekly strategy call. "The girl knows too much about the old operations. If she connects the dots, the threat hung unspoken between them." Alex had already set several plans in motion. Anonymous tips to the tabloids suggested Mia was mentally unstable, driven mad by her family's disgrace. He arranged for her online consulting business to be flagged for regulatory review, effectively cutting off her income. Each move designed to discredit and isolate her further. At Matthews Capital, Alex accelerated his takeover plans. Key positions were filled with his loyalists. Long-time employees who questioned his decisions found themselves facing sudden audits or ethics investigations. The board, concerned about stability, approved each change with minimal scrutiny. His masterpiece was a complex series of trades designed to force the company's stock price down while appearing to try to save it. Each failed rescue attempt would increase his control while making Ryan look more incompetent. The same strategy he'd perfected during the Castellanos collapse, but refined and nearly untraceable. However, Ryan's recent activities worried him. His former friend had stopped drinking, started asking questions about old transactions. Alex's sources reported Ryan meeting with forensic accountants in New Jersey, far from prying eyes. More concerning was Sarah Matthews' involvement. Ryan's sister had been seen visiting both her brother and Mia, potentially forming a bridge between them. Alex knew from experience that Sarah's analytical mind made her dangerous. "We need to accelerate our timeline," he told his inner circle during a late-night meeting. "Ryan still has allies on the board. If he finds proof before we're ready, he let the implications sink in." The new plan was audacious. Alex would engineer a liquidity crisis, forcing Matthews Capital to seek emergency funding. The Thompson family's investment firm would offer salvation in exchange for complete control. The same strategy that had worked with Castellanos, but on a grander scale. But Alex's obsession with Mia complicated everything. He found himself driving past Sophie's apartment at night, watching Mia's shadow move behind curtained windows. The sight of her pregnancy both enraged and fascinated him. Those should have been his children, his future. His personal journal, hidden in a safe behind his office artwork, revealed darker thoughts. Pages filled with detailed fantasies of how things should have been. Mia grateful for his protection after her family's fall, Ryan exposed as a fraud, a different ending to their story. The pressure began showing in small ways. Alex snapped at assistants, made uncharacteristic mistakes in meetings. His perfect facade had showing cracks. During a board presentation, he referred to Mia as Ryan's former fiancée, drawing curious looks. His father noticed the changes. "You're too emotionally involved," Richard warned. "This is business, nothing more. Don't let some woman cloud your judgment like she did with the Castellano situation." But Alex couldn't let go. Each new photo from his surveillance team went into a private folder on his encrypted laptop. He tracked her medical appointments, knowing things about her pregnancy that even Ryan didn't know. His obsession grew alongside her advancing pregnancy. The final phase of his plan targeted the unborn twins. Anonymous sources suggested they might not be Ryan's, planting seeds of doubt in the media. Alex knew the truth, but the whispers served his purpose, further isolating Mia while devastating Ryan. Yet even as he orchestrated their destruction, Alex kept 2 tickets to Singapore in his safe, one for himself, one for Mia. A fantasy escape plan, a dream of taking her away from everything, making her see him as her savior rather than her destroyer. His rationality was slipping, and deep down he knew it. The controlled, calculated destroyer of companies was becoming undone by the same emotions he'd always dismissed as weakness in others. The hunter was becoming trapped in his own elaborate snare. The Matthews family dinner table had always been a battleground of ideologies, but tonight's gathering crackled with unprecedented tension. Sarah Matthews stood at one end, ultrasound photos spread before her, while her mother Ellen clutched her pearls in distress at the other. "They're your grandsons," Sarah insisted, pushing the photos toward her parents. "Look at them. Perfect little spines, strong heartbeats. Are you really going to let your pride keep you from knowing them?" James Matthews, who had remained silent through most of the family drama, finally spoke. "It's not about the babies, Sarah. It's about trust. This girl, this Castellanos woman, she lied to all of us." "Like we've never lied to protect ourselves," Sarah challenged. "Dad, you still tell people you chose to retire early, when we all know the school pushed you out after the budget cuts. Mom pretends her accounting practice is thriving, but I've seen the bills she hides from you." But the truth landed like a slap. Ellen's face flushed red, while James studied his water glass intently. Into this charged silence walked Ryan, late as usual, looking exhausted but more clear-eyed than he had in months. Across town, in Sophie's small apartment, another family drama unfolded. Edward Castellanos had flown in from San Francisco, against his doctor's advice, determined to protect his daughter. Emma had escaped their mother's watchful eye to join them, bringing a spark of the old Mia back with her presence. The Thompson family, Edward explained, spreading old documents across Sophie's kitchen table. They were always there, hovering at the edges. Richard Thompson claimed to be my friend, but Alex watched everything, learned everything. Mia, one hand resting on her prominent belly, connected the dots her father was laying out. They used us as a test run, she realized. Everything they're doing to Matthew's capital, they perfected with us. The alliance between Sarah Matthews and Mia formed naturally, born of shared concern and professional respect. Sarah's medical knowledge proved invaluable in managing Mia's difficult pregnancy, while Mia's financial expertise helped Sarah understand the complexity of the corporate warfare. "Your brother isn't the enemy," Mia told Sarah during one of her checkups. "He's a victim, just like my father was." We all other two women began meeting regularly, sharing information and forming plans. Ellen Matthews' transformation came unexpectedly. Reviewing old Castellanos records out of professional curiosity, her accountant's mind spotted patterns that her prejudices had previously hidden. This wasn't failure, she told Ryan quietly one evening. This was assassination. The unlikely alliance grew stronger when Emma discovered old emails on their mother's computer, showing correspondence between Richard Thompson and various board members during Castellanos Investment Group's final days. She forwarded them to Sarah, who shared them with Ryan. James Matthews, the former history teacher, contributed his own expertise. Years of teaching about power structures and political manipulation gave him insight into the Thompson family's methods. They're following a classic pattern, he explained to the growing group of allies. Divide, isolate, then conquer. But the most surprising support came from Catherine Castellanos. From her treatment facility, she began writing detailed letters about the social dynamics she'd observed during her years as a Wall Street wife. Her sharp observations, unhampered by social niceties, proved invaluable. Sophie became the group's unofficial headquarters, her apartment transforming into a command center. Her background in investigative journalism, previously focused on restaurant reviews, found new purpose in untangling the web of corporate deceit. The pregnancy, advancing into its final months, added urgency to their efforts. The twins, active and healthy despite the stress surrounding them, became a symbol of hope and redemption for both families. Yet Alex still had powerful allies. Richard Thompson's influence ran deep in New York's financial circles. Board members, regulators, and media figures all owed favors to the Thompson family. Each small victory by the Matthews-Castellanos alliance was met with swift, calculated retaliation. The turning point came when Ellen Matthews finally met Mia face to face. Seeing the young woman's genuine love for her sons, her determination to uncover the truth despite personal cost, melted Ellen's remaining resistance. "We've been wrong," she admitted to her husband that night, "so terribly wrong." As the families united, their combined resources and knowledge began to pose a real threat to Alex's plans. But with his mental state deteriorating and his obsession with Mia growing, he became more dangerous than ever. The race was on to expose the truth before he could complete his takeover, or worse, act on his increasingly unstable impulses. The first signs of trouble came during a routine checkup in Mia's 8th month. Sarah Matthews, who had insisted on being present for all medical appointments, noticed the concerning numbers on the monitor before even the attending physician did. "Her blood pressure's too high," Sarah said, gripping Mia's hand, "and the twins' heart rates are irregular." The doctor ordered immediate bed rest, but everyone in the room could sense this was just the beginning of their troubles. Sophie converted her living room into a makeshift hospital room with monitoring equipment beeping constantly. Mia lay there, growing paler by the day, while both families took turns maintaining a constant vigil. Ellen Matthews surprised everyone by being particularly attentive, her practical nature finding purpose in managing Mia's care schedule. "The stress is killing her," Sarah confided to Ryan during one of their increasingly frequent phone calls. "The babies are strong, but Mia, she's putting everything into keeping them safe. Her body can't take much more." The crisis escalated one rainy night when Mia woke up gasping for air, her face and hands swollen. Preeclampsia, Sarah diagnosed immediately, already dialing 911. "We need to get her to the hospital now." The emergency room at New York Presbyterian became a battlefield of a different kind. Doctors rushed to stabilize Mia's condition while both families waited anxiously. Ryan paced the corridor, torn between staying away as he had for months and his desperate need to be there. "Go to her," James Matthews finally said, pushing his son toward the door. Pride isn't worth 3 lives inside the room. Mia lay surrounded by machines, looking smaller and more vulnerable than Ryan had ever seen her. The medical team's prognosis was grim. "The twins are putting tremendous strain on her system," the specialist explained. "Traditional treatments aren't working as well as we'd hope. We may need to consider early delivery to save all 3 of them." But at only 32 weeks, the risks to the twins were significant. Each day they could stay inside was crucial for their development, yet each day also pushed Mia's body closer to its breaking point. Edward Castellanos, who had been maintaining a stoic facade, finally broke down. "I can't lose her too," he sobbed to Ryan in the hospital corridor. "After everything, her mother's breakdown, our family's disgrace, Mia was the one who held us together. She's stronger than all of us." The twins, as if sensing their mother's distress, became increasingly active. Monitors showed their movements, their little hearts fighting alongside Mia's. The doctors spoke in hushed tones about difficult choices that might need to be made. Sophie established a rotation schedule for the vigil, ensuring Mia was never alone. During her shifts, she would read aloud from Mia's favorite books, filling the sterile hospital room with stories of hope and redemption. Emma, finally allowed to fully support her sister, took the night shifts. She sang softly to the twins, old lullabies their mother had sung to them, watching the monitors show how they responded to her voice. But it was during Ryan's shifts that the most remarkable changes occurred. Though barely conscious, Mia's vital signs would stabilize when he spoke to her. The twins, too, seemed calmer when their father was near. "I'm sorry," he whispered one night, holding her hand as machines beeped around them. "I should have trusted you, should have listened. Should have been here all along." Whether Mia could hear him remained uncertain, but the monitors showed a slight improvement in her condition. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a specialist in high-risk pregnancies, who had worked with Catherine Castellanos during her difficult pregnancy with Emma, heard about Mia's condition and flew in from California. Dr. Anderson brought new treatment protocols, experimental but promising. "We can try to buy more time," she explained to the assembled families. "But Mia's strength, her will to fight, that's going to be crucial." The next few days became a delicate balance. Every small victory, a slight drop in blood pressure, a more stable heart rate was celebrated. Every setback brought fresh waves of fear. Through it all, the 2 families grew closer, their former animosity forgotten in the face of possible tragedy. Ellen Matthews took charge of coordinating with insurance companies and medical staff. James Matthews used his teacher's organizational skills to manage the constant flow of information and visitors. But the underlying tension remained. Every day they kept the twins inside increased their chances of survival, while pushing Mia closer to a crisis point. The choice they all dreaded, mother or babies, loomed ever closer. While Mia fought for her life in the hospital, Alex Thompson launched his endgame. The emergency board meeting was called on a stormy Friday evening, with most members attending virtually, a detail Alex had carefully planned to minimize face-to-face confrontations. "Matthews Capital faces an unprecedented crisis," Alex began, his voice grave but his eyes gleaming with barely concealed triumph. "Our stock has fallen 60% in 3 months. Major clients are withdrawing. We need decisive action to survive." The presentation that followed was masterfully crafted. Graphs showed plummeting revenues, charts illustrated client departures, and projections painted a dire future. Each piece of data had been carefully manipulated, showing the worst possible interpretation of already challenging circumstances. "The Thompson Group is prepared to offer a lifeline," Richard Thompson announced, joining virtually from his London office. "We'll inject $2 billion in emergency capital, stabilize the company, and protect stakeholder interests." The unspoken price of this rescue, complete control of Matthew's capital, hung heavy in the air. Ryan, attending remotely from the hospital, where he kept vigil over Mia, watched his father's old friend deliver what amounted to a corporate death sentence. The timing was no coincidence. Alex had waited until Ryan was at his most vulnerable, distracted by Mia's condition. But Ryan wasn't as defenseless as they believed. Months of quiet investigation had prepared him for this moment. Sarah, watching the meeting on her laptop from the hospital cafeteria, gave him the signal their countermove was ready. Before we vote, Ryan interrupted, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. The board should review some additional information. With a click, he shared documents that made several board members gasp audibly. The evidence was devastating. Trading records showed systematic manipulation dating back to the Castellanos collapse. Email trails revealed Alex's careful orchestration of both companies' downfalls. But most damning were the recordings, Alex's own words, captured during late-night office conversations detailing his plans. "This is absurd," Alex sputtered, his composure cracking for the first time. "These documents are clearly fabricated. Ryan is desperate, trying to distract from his own failures." But Ryan wasn't finished. "The SEC has already received copies of everything I'm showing you. Their investigation begins Monday morning." The silence that followed was deafening. Richard Thompson attempted to salvage the situation. "Even if these allegations have merit, the company still needs immediate stabilization. Our offer will not be necessary," a new voice interrupted. Edward Castellanos appeared on screen, looking more composed and commanding than he had in years. "A consortium of investors, led by my family's remaining allies, is prepared to provide emergency funding, without the strings attached to the Thompson offer." Alex's facade finally cracked. "You're bluffing," he snarled. "The Castellanos name is poison in this industry. Nobody would risk." "On the contrary," Edward continued calmly, "many people remember how your family engineered our downfall. They're quite eager to see justice done." The board meeting devolved into chaos. Alex's supporters tried to call for an immediate vote, while others demanded time to review the new evidence. Through it all, Ryan remained oddly calm, his thoughts with Mia and their unborn sons just a few floors away. The turning point came when Janet Chen, the former Castellanos compliance officer, gave her testimony. Her detailed account of Alex's methods, supported by years of carefully preserved documentation, left no room for doubt about his guilt. Alex made one final, desperate attempt. "Ryan abandoned this company," he shouted. "While he played house with Maria Castellanos, I kept us afloat. Everything I did was to protect Matthew's capital." "No," Ryan replied quietly. "Everything you did was for yourself, just like you destroyed Castellanos' investment group for yourself. The company was just collateral damage in your game." The vote, when it finally came, was decisive. Alex was removed from his position pending criminal investigation. The Thompson Group's offer was rejected, and Ryan, though still on leave to be with his family, was confirmed as remaining CEO. As security escorted Alex from the building, he maintained his composure until reaching the lobby. There, in front of the Matthews Capital logo he had coveted for so long, he finally broke down. His carefully constructed world had crumbled, just as he had once destroyed the worlds of others. But the victory felt hollow to Ryan as he rushed back to Mia's hospital room. Corporate battles seemed meaningless compared to the fight for life happening in the maternity ward. As he took his place beside her bed, holding her hand, he wondered if winning back his company would cost him something far more precious. The psychiatric evaluation room at the Manhattan Detention Complex was stark and cold. Alex Thompson, still wearing his bespoke suit from the night of his arrest, sat across from Dr. Eleanor Hayes, the court-appointed psychiatrist. His usual polished facade had cracked, revealing something darker beneath. "Let's talk about Mia Castellanos," Dr. Hayes suggested, watching Alex's hands clench at the name. What followed was a torrent of obsession that had been building for years. I saw her first, Alex began, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. At Stanford during a campus recruitment visit. She was brilliant, beautiful, and completely unaware of my existence. Even then, she only had eyes for the rising stars, people like Ryan. The story poured out how he had tracked her career at her father's company, collected every news article mentioning her name, planned countless accidental meetings that never happened. When Castellano's investment group began showing weakness, Alex saw his opportunity. The plan was perfect, he explained, pride and bitterness mixing in his voice. Destroy her father's company, sweep in as her savior. She would have seen me then, appreciated me. But Ryan always got there first. Detective Michael Carter, listening from behind the two-way mirror, began piecing together the extent of Alex's obsession. The evidence team had found a hidden room in his penthouse apartment, walls covered with photos of Mia spanning years at charity events, leaving her father's office, even recent shots of her pregnant at doctor's appointments. Sarah Matthews, reviewing Alex's private journals as part of the investigation, discovered entries dating back to their college days. Ryan doesn't deserve his success, one entry read. He doesn't deserve her. I've worked harder, planned better, been smarter. Everything he has should be mine. The true scope of Alex's manipulation became clear through his therapy sessions. The Castellanos' collapse had been more than a corporate takeover. It was his first attempt to force Mia into his orbit. When that failed, he spent years perfecting his strategy, waiting for another chance. I made her life harder on purpose, he admitted during one session. Every job application mysteriously rejected, every potential investor warned away from her father's recovery attempts. I wanted her vulnerable, needed her to feel like I was her only hope. Richard Thompson, attempting to distance himself from his son's crimes, revealed how Alex had manipulated his own family. He convinced me Ryan was weak, that Matthews Capital needed stronger leadership. I never knew about his obsession with the girl. I thought it was just business. The most chilling revelations came from Alex's private server. Files showed detailed plans for after the Matthews Capital takeover arrangements for Mia's protection during her pregnancy, plans to separate her from Ryan permanently, even a nursery designed in his apartment for the twins. They're meant to be mine, he told Dr. Hayes, his composure finally breaking. The company, Mia, the babies, all of it. I've spent years making everything perfect. Ryan just got in the way, like he always does. Sophie, visiting Alex in detention to confront him about his surveillance of Mia, found him a shell of his former self. You watched us for months, she accused. You knew how sick she was getting, but you just kept pushing. Alex's response chilled her. She needed to see that Ryan wouldn't protect her. That only I could keep her safe. The pregnancy complications weren't part of the plan, but I could have saved her. I had the best doctors ready. The investigation revealed offshore accounts containing millions earmarked for contingency plans, private security teams, remote properties, even false identities. Alex had prepared for every scenario except his own failure. Edward Castellanos, reviewing the evidence with prosecutors, recognized patterns he'd missed years ago. He didn't just want to destroy us, he realized. He wanted to rebuild everything in his own image, with himself as the hero of the story. The final piece fell into place when Emma discovered Alex's childhood records. Years of psychiatric treatment for obsessive tendencies, incidents of stalking, a pattern of fixating on what others had and believing he deserved it more. As the full truth emerged, even Alex's strongest defenders fell away. The Thompson family publicly disowned him. The board members who had supported him rushed to cooperate with investigators, and his carefully constructed world of influence crumbled. But in his cell, Alex remained focused on one thing: Mia's hospital room number, which he had memorized from his surveillance. Even in defeat, his obsession burned undiminished, waiting for one last chance to reshape reality according to his desires. The intensive care unit at New York Presbyterian operated in its own time zone, where seconds stretched into hours and hours compressed into moments of crisis. Mia's condition had stabilized, but the twins were showing signs of distress. Meanwhile, across town, Matthew's capital teetered on the brink of collapse, despite Alex's removal. Ryan found himself living between two worlds. During the day, he worked frantically to save his company, making calls from the hospital corridor, reassuring clients and steadying nervous investors. At night, he sat by Mia's bed, holding her hand, willing her and their sons to stay strong. The next 48 hours are critical, Sarah explained during an emergency family meeting in the hospital cafeteria. Both for Mia's health and the company's survival. We need everyone working together. The plan they devised was audacious. Edward Castellanos would leverage his remaining connections to stabilize Matthew's capital, while Ellen Matthews would coordinate with medical teams to ensure Mia received the best possible care. Every family member had a role to play in this desperate race against time. The market opens in 6 hours, Edward announced, checking his watch. If we can't show strong leadership and clear evidence of stability, the stock will go into free fall. The irony of him fighting to save the company that had once destroyed his own wasn't lost on anyone. Sophie transformed the hospital waiting room into a makeshift office, setting up laptops and conference calls. James Matthews surprised everyone by proving adept at handling the media, his teacher's ability to explain complex situations simply proving invaluable. Emma worked with Janet Chen to prepare documentation for the SEC, proving both Alex's manipulation and the company's underlying strength. Every previous quarter's results had to be restated, showing the true picture beneath Alex's deceptions. But the real battle was happening in Mia's room. Her blood pressure remained dangerously high, and the twins' heart rates kept dropping. Dr. Anderson had warned them that decisions about early delivery might need to be made within hours. I won't choose between them, Ryan declared when the medical team suggested prioritizing either Mia or the babies. Find another way. There has to be another way. His voice broke on the last words, exhaustion and fear finally showing through his composed exterior. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Catherine Castellanos, hearing of her daughter's condition, had checked herself out of her treatment facility. She arrived at the hospital carrying medical records from her own difficult pregnancy with Mia. The same condition, she explained to the surprised doctors. I nearly died carrying her. But there was an experimental treatment. The medical team huddled over the old records, hope rekindling. Meanwhile, the stock market opening loomed. Edward and Ryan prepared to address major investors on a conference call that could determine Matthew's capital's fate. But as Ryan began to speak, alarms blared from Mia's room. The baby, Sarah shouted from the doorway. We need to move now. Ryan froze, torn between his responsibilities. Edward gently took the phone from his hand. Go, he said softly. Some things matter more than business. I'll handle this. The next hours passed in a blur of medical terminology and life or death decisions. The experimental treatment Catherine had suggested showed promise, but required perfect timing. One twin's heart rate stabilized, while the others became more erratic. Outside in the financial world, Edward fought his own battle. Drawing on decades of experience and every favor he could call in, he presented a vision of Matthew's capital's future that emphasized stability and ethical leadership. The stock, which had plunged at opening, began to slowly recover. In a quiet moment between crises, Ryan found himself alone with Edward in the hospital chapel. I'm sorry, he said simply. For everything that happened with your company, I never knew. Edward shook his head. We both lost things to Alex's manipulations, but maybe we were meant to lose them to find something more important. He gestured toward the ICU where his daughter fought for life. Family, truth, second chances. The pivotal moment arrived as dawn broke over Manhattan. Dr. Anderson emerged from Mia's room, exhausted but smiling. She's stabilizing, she announced, and the twins. They're fighters, just like their mother. At the same moment, Emma burst in with news from the financial markets. Matthew's capital stock had rallied, closing above its opening price. The company would survive. Ryan barely heard the company news, focused entirely on Mia as she finally opened her eyes. "The babies," she whispered. He squeezed her hand, tears falling freely. "Safe," he assured her. "We're all going to be safe now." Around them, both families celebrated quietly, new bonds forged in crisis stronger than old grievances. The company could be rebuilt, relationships could be healed, but these moments of life continuing, of love persisting, these were the true victories. The relative calm following Mia's stabilization shattered at 3:47 a.m. when monitors began shrieking in her hospital room. Sarah Matthews, taking her turn on the night watch, instantly recognized the emergency signals. One of the twins was in severe distress. Code blue. Maternity Sarah's voice echoed through the corridors as she slammed the emergency button. Within seconds, the room flooded with medical staff. Dr. Anderson, who had been sleeping in an on-call room, arrived, still pulling on her coat. "The smaller twin's heart rate is crashing," she announced, studying the monitors. "The umbilical cord might be compressed. We need to move now." The medical team began preparing for an emergency C-section. Ryan, who had been dozing in the waiting room, burst in just as they were transferring Mia to a gurney. Her eyes found his, filled with terror. "Don't let them die," she pleaded. "Promise me you'll save them both." Mrs. Matthews, Dr. Anderson interrupted gently. They had married legally in a small hospital ceremony days earlier. "We need your consent. If we have to choose," she left the terrible choice unspoken. Mia's voice was surprisingly steady. "Save my babies. No matter what happens to me." Ryan started to protest, but she squeezed his hand with unexpected strength. "Promise me, Ryan." "They come first." The journey to the operating room felt endless. The smaller twin's heart rate continued to drop while his brother's remained steady, a detail that would haunt the family later, this first sign of one brother fighting to protect the other. In the awe, Ryan held Mia's hand as the anesthesia took effect. The last thing she whispered was their chosen names, James Edward and William Alexander, names bridging both families, chosen before all the revelations about Alex, now carrying new meaning. The operation itself was a ballet of organized chaos. Dr. Anderson moved with precise urgency, her years of experience evident in every motion. The first twin, James Edward, emerged crying lustily, his lungs powerful despite his early arrival. But William Alexander came out silent, the umbilical cord wrapped twice around his tiny neck. The pediatric team swept him immediately to a waiting incubator, beginning resuscitation efforts. Ryan stood frozen between his silent second son and Mia, whose vital signs were becoming erratic. "She's hemorrhaging," someone called out. The room erupted into even more focused activity. Sarah, who had scrubbed in to assist, felt tears running beneath her surgical mask as she worked to help save her sister-in-law and nephew. Minutes stretched like hours. James Edward's strong cries provided a soundtrack to the medical team's desperate efforts with his brother. Finally, a tiny, outraged wail joined his brother's. William Alexander had decided to stay and fight. But the victory was short-lived. Mia's blood pressure plummeted, her body struggling to cope with the trauma of the emergency surgery. "We're losing her," Dr. Anderson announced, her composed voice carrying an edge of fear. Outside, in the waiting room, both families huddled together, old enmities forgotten in the face of possible tragedy. Edward held Catherine's hand while she prayed. Ellen Matthews, the practical accountant, methodically made lists of everything the babies would need, her way of maintaining hope. Inside the awe, the medical team fought minute by minute to stabilize Mia. The twins, now both crying healthily, were moved to the NICU, Ryan torn between staying with his wife and following his sons. "Go with them," Sarah ordered her brother. "I'll stay with Mia. Those boys need their father right now." The look that passed between siblings carried years of understanding and trust. As dawn broke over Manhattan, 3 battles for survival continued, 2 tiny boys learning to breathe on their own, and their mother fighting to stay with them. The waiting room remained full. 2 families now united as one, praying for 3 precious lives to stay in this world. While the Matthews and Castellanos families kept vigil at the hospital, Alex Thompson made his final desperate move from his detention cell. Through a network of loyal employees, he initiated a series of pre-planned trading algorithms designed to trigger a market panic. Mr. Matthews, a junior analyst, called Ryan's hospital phone at dawn. "The trading systems are going haywire. Everything's selling at once. We can't override the commands." The panic in his voice was evident, even through the poor connection. Edward Castellanos, who had been dozing in a hospital chair, snapped awake at Ryan's expression. Within minutes, both men were hunched over laptops in the hospital cafeteria, watching in horror as Matthews Capital's stock plunged in pre-market trading. "It's Alex," Edward realized, recognizing the pattern. "These are the same algorithms he used against my company. He's trying to burn everything down rather than let it survive without him." The timing was devastating. With Ryan focused on Mia and the twins, the company was vulnerable. Major clients, seeing the stock price collapse, began pulling their investments. The board members, still reeling from recent revelations, seemed paralyzed. Janet Chen, working through the night at Matthews Capital's offices, discovered the extent of Alex's planning. "He embedded these protocols deep in our trading systems," she reported via conference call. "They're designed to trigger automatically if he ever lost control." The betrayal went deeper than anyone had imagined. Alex had prepared a series of documents, timed to release to the media, suggesting that both Ryan and Edward had conspired to manipulate markets for years. Though false, the allegations were crafted skillfully enough to seem plausible. "He's trying to take us all down with him," Ryan realized, torn between the financial crisis and his family's medical emergency. Every time his phone buzzed, he feared it would be news about Mia or the twins, only to find another financial disaster demanding attention. Emma Castellanos proved unexpectedly crucial in these moments. Her fresh perspective on the company's systems helped identify weaknesses in Alex's algorithms. Working with Janet, she began dismantling his destructive protocols one by one. But Alex had one final card to play. Through his attorney, he offered a deal. He would provide the codes to stop the trading cascade in exchange for immunity from prosecution and a significant ownership stake in Matthews Capital. "He's insane," Richard Thompson declared when informed of his son's demands. The elder Thompson, trying to salvage his family's reputation, had flown in from London to help contain the damage. "He needs to be stopped, not negotiated with." But the solution came from an unexpected source. Catherine Castellanos, between prayers for her daughter and grandsons, remembered something from her years as a Silicon Valley spouse. "The backup servers," she said suddenly. "Every trading system has physical backups from before recent changes." This insight led to a desperate plan. If they could locate the original server backups from before Alex's modifications, they might be able to restore the system to a clean state. The challenge was finding them in time. Working against the clock, Emma and Janet coordinated with it teams to locate and validate the backup servers. Each minute that passed cost the company millions in market value, but rushing could prove even more disastrous. From his detention cell, Alex watched the financial news with growing fury as his plan began to unravel. His final attempt to destroy what he couldn't possess was being thwarted by the very families he had tried to destroy. The turning point came when Emma found the crucial backup, hidden in a secondary data center under a mislabeled file. With this discovery, they could begin rebuilding the trading systems, free from Alex's malicious code. As markets closed that day, Matthews Capital's stock had stabilized. The company had survived, though wounded, but the experience had proved something important. The combined strength of the Matthews and Castellanos families could overcome even the most carefully planned betrayal. The confrontation that had been brewing for months finally erupted in the hospital's private waiting room. Richard Thompson arrived unannounced, demanding to see Ryan, his face ashen with the weight of newly discovered truths about his son's actions. "I need to understand," Richard began, his voice breaking. "How long have you known about Alex's manipulation?" About what we did to the Castellanos family, the room fell silent, all eyes turning to Ryan, who stood protectively between Richard and the door to Mia's room. Edward Castellano stepped forward, years of suppressed anger visible in his stance. "You want to understand now? After your son nearly destroyed both our families. After he obsessed over my daughter for years, why you looked the other way." Ellen Matthews, surprising everyone, moved to stand between the two men. "This isn't helping Mia or the twins," she said firmly. "If you want to understand, Richard, start by listening to what your son really did to both our families." The story poured out Alex's long obsession with Mia, his calculated destruction of Castellanos' investment group, his manipulation of Matthews' capital, all enabled by the Thompson family's influence and willful blindness. "I thought it was just business," Richard whispered, sinking into a chair. "Aggressive tactics, yes, but not. Not this." His hands trembled as he looked at photos of his newborn grandsons in intensive care, victims of stress his son had helped create. Catherine Castellanos, who had been silent throughout the exchange, suddenly spoke. "We all failed," she said quietly. "I saw signs of Alex's obsession with Mia years ago at charity events, but I was too caught up in our social position to worry about a young man's apparent crush." James Matthews cleared his throat. "My wife and I, we judged Mia harshly, assumed the worst because of her background. We let our prejudices blind us to the truth." Ellen squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes. The tension broke when a nurse brought news William Alexander, the smaller twin, had briefly opened his eyes. "He's a fighter," she reported. Just like his mother, the shared relief momentarily united the fractured group. Richard stood, straightening his shoulders. "I can't undo what Alex has done," he declared. "But I can help ensure he never hurts anyone again." He pulled out his phone, calling his lawyers to withdraw all legal support from his son. Emma, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "Maybe that's what this is all about, breaking the cycles of family pride and prejudice that let someone like Alex manipulate us all." Sarah added her medical perspective. "Trauma can either break families apart or forge them stronger. Right now, Mia and the twins need all of us to choose the latter." The conversation shifted to practical matters, coordinating care for the twins, supporting Mia's recovery, protecting both families' interests from further attacks. Old barriers dissolved as they worked together, finding strength in their shared purpose. A soft knock interrupted them. Sophie stood in the doorway, her face tear-stained but smiling. "Mia's awake," she announced, "and she's asking for everyone, all of you." The group moved toward Mia's room, but Richard held back. Edward noticed and turned. Their eyes met, decades of business rivalry and personal animosity hanging between them. "Come," Edward said simply, extending his hand. "My grandsons should know all their family's history, the good and the bad. That's how we learn to do better." As they entered Mia's room together, the beeping monitors and whispered conversations created a symphony of hope. In this moment, surrounded by former enemies turned allies, they understood that true family isn't defined by blood or business, but by the choice to stand together when it matters most. In the quiet hours after midnight, while her twins slept in the NICU and the families had finally gone home to rest, Mia made the hardest decision of her life. Still weak from surgery, she asked Sophie to bring her laptop to her hospital bed. "You need to rest," Sophie protested, but Mia's determination was absolute. "The truth needs to come out," Mia whispered. "All of it. Not just about Alex, but about everything." Through the night, Mia wrote her story not for the press or prosecutors, but for her sons. She documented everything: her privileged childhood, her father's company's collapse, her years of hiding, and her genuine love for Ryan. Every painful truth, every mistake, every moment of fear and hope. "They deserve to know who they are," she explained to Sophie, who watched worriedly as Mia pushed herself to continue despite her exhaustion. "Both sides of their heritage, the good and the bad." The document became more than just a confession. It was a love letter to her sons, explaining how their parents found each other despite family histories and corporate warfare. It was also a warning about the dangers of pride, secrets, and the walls people build around their hearts. When Ryan found her at dawn, still typing, he tried to take the laptop away. The doctor said you need rest, he insisted, but stopped when he saw tears rolling down her cheeks. I almost lost them, Mia said, touching the screen where she'd placed photos of their sons. I almost lost you, all because I was too afraid to trust in the truth. I won't make that mistake again. The final pages contained something unexpected, detailed evidence of her own father's mistakes that had contributed to Castellanos Investment Group's vulnerability. Information she had protected for years, wanting to shield her father from further pain. Edward, reading it later that morning, wept openly. You didn't have to do this, he told his daughter, but Mia shook her head. Yes, I did, she replied. We can't build a future for James and William on half-truths and protected secrets. They deserve to inherit honesty, not just wealth. The document circulation was carefully controlled, first to family members, then to the board of Matthews Capital, finally to key investigators. Each revelation brought both pain and healing, forcing everyone to confront their roles in the events that had brought them here. Mia's sacrifice of her family's last secrets had an unexpected effect. Rather than destroying relationships, it strengthened them. The complete truth, however painful, allowed real healing to begin. In the NICU, holding William's tiny hand through the incubator window, Mia explained her decision to her son. You and your brother will grow up knowing exactly who you are, she promised. No hidden identities, no family secrets, no shame about any part of your heritage. The physical toll of her night of truth-telling was severe. Her doctors scolded her for pushing herself so soon after surgery, but the emotional weight that lifted from her shoulders seemed to help her recovery in other ways. You're the bravest person I know, Ryan told her that evening, reading through her account of their story. I'm sorry I ever doubted you. Mia smiled weakly, touching his face. We all have to be brave now, she said. For them, she gestured toward the NICU where their sons fought their own battles for survival. The truth, finally fully revealed, began to heal wounds that had festered for years. It wasn't just Mia's sacrifice of her last protective secrets, it was her willingness to face every painful reality for the sake of her children's future. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While cleaning out Alex's office at Matthews Capital, Janet Chen discovered a hidden wall safe behind a painting. Inside, along with photos of Mia's spanning years, lay a leather-bound journal dating back to the Castellanos Investment Group collapse. You need to see this, Janet told Ryan, her hands trembling as she handed him the journal. The pages contained Alex's meticulous documentation of his plan to destroy Castellanos Investment Group, including communications with corrupt regulators and manipulated evidence used in the investigation. Emma and Sarah, working together to catalogue the evidence, found something even more damning. Hidden in Alex's private cloud storage were recordings of conversations between him and the officials who had investigated Castellanos Investment Group. The officials had been bribed to ignore evidence of market manipulation. He kept everything Emma whispered, scrolling through years of archived emails. Every detail, every manipulation, every person he blackmailed or bribed. He documented it all. Edward Castellanos sat in stunned silence as Ryan presented the evidence. The journal entries proved that his company's collapse had been orchestrated not just by market forces, but by a deliberate campaign of destruction led by Alex Thompson, enabled by his father's connections. Your instincts were right, Ryan told his father-in-law. You were targeted. And Mia, she saw it coming. Those warnings she tried to give you about irregular trading patterns, she was right all along. The evidence extended beyond just the Castellanos case. Alex had kept records of every scheme, every manipulation, possibly as insurance against his own family. His detailed notes revealed how he had learned from destroying Castellanos Investment Group, refining his methods for his later attack on Matthews Capital. Catherine Castellanos, reading through the translated evidence in her hospital room beside Mia, finally understood the full scope of what her daughter had tried to prevent. "You knew," she said softly to Mia. "You tried to warn us, but we were too proud to listen." The SEC investigators who reviewed the new evidence were stunned by its thoroughness. Alex's compulsive need to document his triumphs had created an unassailable record of years of financial crimes. The evidence was clear enough to begin the process of formally clearing Edward Castellanos' name. Richard Thompson, confronted with proof of his own unwitting role in his son's schemes, made a decisive choice. He announced the Thompson Group would establish a fund to compensate former Castellanos Investment Group employees and clients who had lost their savings in the collapse. "It won't undo the damage," he told Edward, "but it's a start toward making things right." In the NICU, where James and William continued to grow stronger each day, Mia received the news of her father's vindication with quiet tears. "They'll grow up knowing their grandfather was a good man," she told Ryan. "That truth matters more than any amount of money." In the financial press, which had once crucified Edward Castellanos, now began publishing retractions and new analyses of the case. The story of how Alex Thompson had orchestrated one of Wall Street's most notorious falls became front-page news. But for the families gathered around the tiny incubators in the NICU, the most important vindication wasn't in the press or the courts. It was in the way Edward could now hold his head high while watching his grandsons, knowing they would grow up proud of both sides of their heritage. Sometimes Edward told his grandsons as they slept in their incubators, "The truth takes time to come out, but it always does in the end." In the maximum security wing of the Metropolitan Detention Center, Alex Thompson sat across from Dr. Eleanor Hayes for their final session before his court appearance. The once immaculate investment banker was a shadow of his former self, his designer suit replaced by prison orange, his confident smirk replaced by a haunted look. "I need to make a full confession," he said quietly, placing a thick envelope on the table. "Not just for the courts, for them. For Mia and Ryan. For their sons." His hands trembled as he spoke the last words. The confession, when it came, was devastating in its completeness. Alex detailed every manipulation, every lie, every calculated move in his decades-long obsession. He explained how he had first spotted Mia at a Stanford alumni event, how her disinterest had triggered something dark inside him. "I convinced myself it was love," he told Dr. Hayes. "But it wasn't. It was ownership, control. I wanted to possess her life the way I wanted to possess everything." Ryan had his voice broke. "I nearly killed her. The babies. I never meant." Ryan agreed to visit Alex in prison, not for forgiveness but for closure. The meeting was brief but profound. Alex couldn't meet his former friend's eyes as he described how he had manipulated both families, playing on the Thompsons' ambition and the Matthews' pride. "I read about the twins," Alex said finally. "William Alexander. You kept the name. Even after everything." Ryan's response was measured. "We kept it to remind them that people can choose who they become, regardless of their name." In court, Alex shocked everyone by refusing his high-powered legal team's defense strategy. Instead, he offered a complete confession, providing evidence that implicated others in the financial industry who had helped him destroy both companies. Richard Thompson, watching his son's confession, aged years in minutes. Alex's revelations implicated many of his father's closest business associates in years of financial crimes. The Thompson empire began to crumble under the weight of investigations. But amid the destruction, Alex showed the first genuine signs of remorse. He voluntarily surrendered all his assets to a restitution fund for those hurt by his schemes. He provided prosecutors with information about other financial crimes he had witnessed over the years. During one crucial testimony, he broke down completely. "I destroyed lives because I couldn't stand seeing others happy," he admitted. "I hurt the only real friend I ever had because I couldn't bear his success. I nearly killed an innocent woman and her babies because I couldn't control her love." Dr. Hayes noted a genuine transformation in their final sessions. The obsessive need to control had been replaced by a desperate desire to make amends. Alex began writing letters to Ryan, to Mia, to their sons to be delivered when they were older. "I want them to understand," he explained, "not to excuse what I did, but to learn from it, to recognize the signs of obsession and jealousy before they destroy lives." The court sentenced Alex to 20 years, but his true punishment was living with the knowledge of what he had almost destroyed. Each day he received a photo of the growing twins, not as torture, but as redemption, a reminder of the life that had survived his darkness. In his cell, Alex began counseling other white-collar criminals, sharing his story as a warning about the destructive power of obsession and unchecked ambition. His genuine remorse and willingness to help others surprised even his most ardent critics. The final act of redemption came when Alex signed papers legally renouncing any claim to Matthews' capital and supporting Edward Castellanos' full rehabilitation in the financial community. His confession had become not just an admission of guilt, but a step toward healing for all involved. The revelation about James Matthews came during a quiet Sunday afternoon at the hospital, just days after the twins were moved out of intensive care. A courier delivered a weathered cardboard box, addressed to Ryan, sent from his father's old study at their Connecticut home. Inside, yellowed papers and old correspondence revealed a truth that shook both families. James Matthews, the seemingly uninvolved high school teacher, had once been a junior analyst at Castellanos Investment Group, working directly under Edward in the company's early days. "I should have told you sooner," James confessed when confronted, his hands shaking as he sat beside the twins' cribs. "I was there when the company started. I saw its potential, its integrity, and I saw the beginning of what destroyed it." The story emerged piece by piece. James had noticed irregularities in trading patterns years before the company's collapse. He had tried to warn Edward through anonymous notes, afraid of the powerful interests involved. When his warnings went unheeded, he resigned and retreated into teaching, carrying the guilt of his silence for decades. "I thought I was protecting our family," he told Ryan, his voice thick with emotion. "But my silence made me complicit. When you started dating Mia, I recognized her immediately. How could I not? She has Edward's eyes, his determination." Ellen Matthews, hearing her husband's confession, understood at last his decades of resistance to Ryan's financial career. You weren't just being stubborn, she realized. You were scared history would repeat itself. The documentation James had kept proved crucial. His meticulous notes, preserved out of a teacher's habit, provided a timeline of early manipulation attempts against Castellanos Investment Group. They showed how Alex Thompson had built upon existing vulnerabilities that James had identified years before. Edward Castellanos, reviewing his former employees' papers, remembered the young analyst who had tried to sound the alarm. "You were right," he told James. "If I had listened then, perhaps everything would have been different." The revelation brought unexpected healing. James's long silence had been born not of prejudice against Mia, but of shame and regret. His resistance to Ryan's career had stemmed from fear, not disapproval. Mia, still recovering from her surgery, found a peculiar comfort in the discovery. "So that's why you were always kind to me," she said to James during one of his visits. "Even when everyone else doubted me, you saw your own past in my story." The twins, oblivious to the drama unfolding around their cribs, brought further reconciliation. James spent hours with his grandsons, telling them stories about their grandfather Edward's early days, about the integrity and vision that had first inspired him. "I spent years teaching history to other people's children," James mused, holding William while Ryan cradled James Jr. "Maybe I should have spent more time sharing our own family's history with my son." The final piece of James's story emerged in a letter he had written but never sent to Edward years ago. It detailed not just the financial irregularities he had observed, but his admiration for the company's original mission and his regret at not fighting harder to protect it. As both families absorbed this new connection in their shared history, they found in it not more pain but a sense of completion. The circle that had begun with James's silent witness, now closed with his grandsons, born to heal the wounds of the past. As the twins grew stronger day by day, more buried connections between the families emerged, each revelation adding layers to their intertwined history. Emma discovered an old photograph while organizing her mother's papers, a faded image from a summer camp 20 years ago showing young Ryan and Mia, aged 12 and 10, sitting next to each other at a talent show. I remember that day, Mia gasped, touching the photograph. "A boy helped me find my lost violin before the performance. That was you." Ryan stared at the image, memories flooding back of a tearful girl searching frantically backstage. Catherine Castellanos unearthed more connections in her old social diaries. Ellen Matthews had once organized a charity event that saved Catherine's favorite youth music program from closing. The two women had worked together for months but never met in person, communicating only through committees and coordinators. "We've been crossing paths our whole lives," Sarah realized, piecing together the coincidences. She found records of herself and Emma attending the same medical conferences years ago, both passionate about pediatric care but working in different cities. The deepest connection emerged through Sophie's investigative journalism. Years before the Castellanos collapse, Edward had anonymously funded a scholarship program at Ryan's high school, believing education was the great equalizer. Ryan had been one of the recipients, the money helping him attend Princeton. "You helped make me who I am," Ryan told Edward. "Long before I ever knew your name." The older man's eyes filled with tears as he watched his grandsons sleeping peacefully in their hospital cribs. James Matthews discovered that his own father, Ryan's grandfather, had once been saved from financial ruin by a quiet intervention from Edward's father. The Castellanos family's tradition of anonymous generosity had touched the Matthews family decades before their current union. The hospital itself held another connection. Dr. Anderson, who had saved Mia and the twins, was revealed to be the daughter of the doctor who had helped Catherine through her difficult pregnancy with Mia. The same medical expertise, passed from mother to daughter, had preserved 2 generations of the family. Even Alex's story contained unknown links. His childhood nanny had been distantly related to the Matthews family, and her stories of their warmth and integrity had first sparked his obsession with their world. His desire to possess what they had stemmed from years of watching their family bonds from the outside. These revelations changed the narrative of their family's relationship. What had seemed like star-crossed lovers fighting against family hatred was revealed to be something more profound. 2 families whose paths had been drawing together for generations, despite the temporary barriers of pride and circumstance. As Mia and Ryan prepared to take their sons home, the weight of these connections settled around them like a protective embrace. Their love story hadn't begun in that restaurant, or even at that summer camp. It had been writing itself through decades of near misses and unknown kindnesses. Perhaps Edward mused, holding his grandson James while Catherine cradled William. All these years of apparent conflict were just the universe's way of bringing us together slowly, making sure we'd be ready when the time came. The twins, growing stronger each day, became living symbols of these connections. In James's serious expressions, the nurses saw Edward's thoughtful gaze. In William's fighting spirit, they recognized Mia's resilience. The best of both families united in 2 tiny beings. The day the twins came home from the hospital marked the beginning of a new chapter for both families. The Matthews Connecticut home and the Castellanos Manhattan apartment had been combined into a temporary joint household in Ryan's penthouse, transformed to accommodate the extended family's needs. Ellen Matthews and Catherine Castellanos, once separated by social status and prejudice, found themselves sharing grandmother duties with surprising harmony. They took turns with night feedings, their former differences forgotten in the shared joy of nurturing their grandsons. "I never thought I'd say this," Ellen confided to Catherine one dawn as they rocked the twins together, "but our differences made our family stronger. Your daughter taught my son how to love beyond ambition." James Matthews converted his teaching skills to family history, documenting both families' stories in a leather-bound journal for the twins. Edward contributed financial records and photographs, their combined narrative telling a tale of redemption and reconciliation. The reconciliation reached beyond the immediate family. Former Castellanos employees were invited to meet the twins, many of them tearfully embracing Mia, remembering the young woman who had tried to warn them years ago. Matthews Capital employees welcomed Edward's occasional visits, learning from his experience and wisdom. Sophie became an honorary family member, her small apartment now a regular Sunday dinner venue where both families gathered weekly. These dinners became a tradition, with each family contributing dishes that told their stories. Ellen's practical New England pot roasts alongside Catherine's elegant French cuisine. Sarah and Emma, bonding over their shared medical interests, started a foundation in the twins' names dedicated to supporting high-risk pregnancy research. Their collaboration healed old wounds while creating new opportunities for others. The most poignant moment came when Ryan and Mia presented their sons at their joint baptism. As James Edward and William Alexander were blessed, 4 grandparents stood together as one family, their past conflicts transformed into a foundation for future generations. "Our boys will never know division," Mia declared, watching their families mingle at the celebration afterward. "They'll only know the strength that comes from bringing people together." The final chapter of corporate justice unfolded in a federal courthouse on a crisp autumn morning. Alex Thompson's comprehensive confession led to a wave of indictments throughout the financial industry, exposing a network of corruption that had enabled his schemes. Matthews Capital and the restored Castellanos Investment Group announced a historic merger, with Ryan and Edward serving as co-chairmen. The new entity, Matthews Castellanos Partners, established itself as a pioneer in ethical investment practices, their painful history becoming a case study in corporate redemption. "We're building something new," Ryan announced at the merger ceremony, founded on transparency, integrity, and family values. Edward stood beside him, their shared vision finally realized in a way neither had imagined possible. The Thompson Group, under Richard's leadership, made full restitution to both families' former clients. The process was painful but necessary, stripping the Thompsons of much of their wealth but restoring their integrity. Richard himself became an advocate for corporate reform, using his experience as a cautionary tale. Janet Chen was appointed Chief Compliance Officer of the merged company, her years of quiet resistance to corruption finally rewarded. She established new protocols for detecting and preventing financial manipulation, protecting other companies from experiencing similar fates. The SEC used the evidence from both cases to implement stricter regulations against market manipulation. The Castellanos-Matthews regulations, as they became known, set new standards for corporate governance and transparency in the financial industry. Emma's technical insights led to the development of new financial security systems designed to prevent the kind of algorithmic manipulation Alex had employed. Her innovations earned her a position on the company's board, bridging the technical and financial worlds. Most significantly, the merged company established a foundation dedicated to supporting small businesses affected by predatory financial practices. The initiative, suggested by Mia, became their way of ensuring that no other families would suffer as theirs had. Justice isn't just about punishment, Edward reflected at the Foundation's launch. It's about making things right, about turning past wrongs into future opportunities. James Edward and William Alexander Matthews grew stronger each day, their progress becoming a living symbol of their family's resilience. Though born prematurely amid crisis, they thrived under the constant care of their extended family. James, the firstborn, showed his grandfather Edward's quiet strength from the start. Even in the NICU, nurses remarked on his calm presence, how he seemed to watch everything with thoughtful eyes. He reached his milestones steadily, approaching each challenge with determination. William, who had fought so hard to survive his first hours, continued to show remarkable resilience. His early struggles made each achievement more precious. The day he first smiled, The entire family gathered around his crib, tears flowing freely as they witnessed his joy. The twins developed a bond that amazed even their doctors. When separated for tests, their vital signs would fluctuate until reunited. In their shared crib at home, they instinctively reached for each other, their tiny hands clasped together while sleeping. Mia's recovery paralleled her son's progress. Each day she grew stronger, her body healing as she watched her boys flourish. The depression that doctors had feared might follow such a traumatic birth never materialized, kept at bay by the constant support of both families. Their first birthday celebration became a testament to healing. Surrounded by both families, the twins took their first steps together, toddling between their grandparents' outstretched arms. Their laughter, echoing through the penthouse, seemed to wash away the last shadows of past pain. They were born into conflict, Ryan observed, watching his sons play, but they'll grow up knowing only love and unity. Maybe that's the greatest healing of all. Dr. Anderson, who had saved all 3 lives, became a regular visitor, marveling at how her smallest patients had become symbols of hope for the entire hospital staff. Their story was shared with other families facing similar challenges, offering encouragement and inspiration. The twins' survival and thriving became the final piece of healing for both families, transforming old wounds into shared joy, past rivalries into unified purpose. In their innocent faces, both the Matthews and Castellanos families saw their best qualities merged, creating something entirely new and precious. On the twins' first birthday, the Matthews-Castellanos family gathered in the penthouse garden, transformed into a wonderland of balloons and flowers. James Edward toddled confidently between guests while William Alexander charmed everyone with his infectious laugh. Mia, glowing with health and happiness, watched her sons play as Ryan wrapped his arms around her. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked, gesturing to their merged families mingling seamlessly around them. Edward and James S.R. had become inseparable friends, often seen plotting elaborate adventures for their grandsons. Catherine and Ellen ran the family's charitable foundation together, their combined business and social skills creating powerful, positive change in the community. Sarah and Emma's Medical Research Foundation had made breakthrough discoveries in preventing pregnancy complications, their work inspired by Mia's experience. Sophie, now a successful investigative journalist, remained a beloved aunt to the twins, her weekly visits a cherished family tradition. The Matthews-Castellanos partners had become a model of ethical business practices, their story taught in business schools as an example of how integrity and success could coexist. But more importantly, the office had become a true family environment where employees felt valued and protected. The greatest lesson Ryan reflected during the birthday toast was learning that true strength comes not from winning battles, but from healing wounds. Our boys were born into a war, but they'll grow up in peace. Alex Thompson, serving his sentence, sent a letter congratulating the twins on their birthday. His genuine remorse and ongoing work with white-collar rehabilitation programs had become part of the family's healing process. As the sun set over Manhattan, the extended family gathered for a photo. 4 generations of Matthews and Castellanos, once divided by pride and circumstance, now united by love and understanding. The twins, central in the picture, embodied everything their families had become stronger together than they ever were apart. To James and William, Edward raised his glass, who taught us all that love is stronger than pride, truth more powerful than deception, and family more precious than any fortune. The story of the Matthews-Castellanos families became more than a tale of reconciliation. It became a testament to the power of forgiveness, the strength of truth, and the healing magic of unconditional love. Dear friends, we hope the story of Ryan and Mia's journey touched your heart as deeply as it touched ours. Every relationship is a journey of discovery, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Did a particular moment resonate with you? Perhaps you found yourself nodding along, seeing echoes of your own experiences in their struggles and triumphs. If you enjoyed this story and found value in its message, Please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Your support enables us to continue crafting these tales of love, redemption, and family bonds. Share this story with your loved ones. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give is a story that reminds us of the power of forgiveness and unconditional love. Your comments and insights mean the world to us and enrich the experience for other listeners. Join our community and be part of these journeys of the heart.